Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Pokémon. Blue Star is also have a Pokémon Master. Chapter 61. Name: Poisonous Demon Bird. Race: Poisonous Demon Bird female. Attributes: Poison, Flying. Features: Throat pouch. Store different plants in the throat pouch to provide different effects for exclusive moves. Flying Walnuts. Increased power, spread and burst, easily causing dizziness. Poison Creeper. The venom spreads, leaving a venom area on the field. Cotton Spore Grass. Changed into a change move, forming poisonous smoke and spreading in a wider range. Others. Slightly increased power. Moves: Venom Spray exclusive move, power 70, poison attribute, physical move, obtains different effects according to characteristics. Poison Smoke exclusive move, poison attribute, changing move, emitting poisonous smoke from the end of the tail. Wing attack, tongue lick, beating, etc. Suyi was a little surprised that the poisonous demon bird didn't have dragon attributes. But it's okay, he now has a dragon and flying type in the team that are 4 times restrained by the ice type, and a dragon and evil type, and a dragon and fighting type that are 4 times restrained by the fairy type. Finally, he has a companion beast that can restrain the fairy type. Suyi immediately turned around and told Sonia about the properties of the poisonous demon bird and its preference for slightly astringent nuts. Is that so? It seems that you still have some research on this kind of Pokémon. Sonia nodded, then communicated with the salesperson and began to choose Pokémon food. Seeing Sonia's professional look, Suyi couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Lu Lina, who was a little bored on the side, noticed Lu Sao following Suyi, and squatted down curiously, looking at the cat wearing leather equipment. What kind of Pokémon is this? Lorena asked herself curiously. Unexpectedly, Mau Mau shook his ears, turned around, waved the cat ball, and said, "My name is Lucao, and I am an Elumiao." "Huh, you can speak," Lu Lina said in surprise. "Is it weird to be able to talk, meow?" Mau Mau wondered. Rather than saying it's weird, it's better to say it's a little bit awesome. Lu Lina said curiously. "I'm awesome, meow." Mau Mau proudly put his hands on his hips. He, can I touch you?" Lu Lina looked at the cute cat and smiled softly. Lucao scratched her cat's ears, then stretched out her cat's paws and said, "You can touch the meatball, meow, but Suyi can only touch the head, meow." "Thank you." Lu Lina stretched out her hand, smiled and touched Mau Mau's fleshy pads. "Okay, let your Pokémon baby try it." Sonia brought over the selected Pokémon food sample. Suyi patted the little poisonous demon bird that was a little limp in his arms and coaxed, "Here comes the food, little one." Wow, the little poisonous demon bird poked its head out of Suyi's arms, smelled the gelatinous food in front of him, then stretched out its long tongue, rolled it up a little and put it into his mouth. Wow, the little poisonous demon bird's eyes lit up, and it moved its body forward, then flicked out its tongue and started eating. It seems that the little guy likes it very much. Sonia smiled. "Thank you, Sonia, otherwise I wouldn't know what to do." Suyi said gratefully. "Nothing, just use my knowledge." Sonia waved her hand modestly. "Guest, these products are packaged." The clerk handed over the packaged Pokémon food. Suyi took out his pocket and said, "How much is it?" The clerk smiled and said, "No, the lady has already paid." Suyi paused his hand and looked at Sonia in surprise. "Wait, you helped me, how can I still ask you to pay for me?" Sonia smiled and said, "You are Dandy's friend, and this is also small money." Suyi sighed in his heart. In the Pokémon world, kind people are always so kind. Although they have never helped others, people like Dandy and Sonia have helped him many times. "In that case, I'll give this to you as a gift." Suyi did not hesitate and put the deep pearl, which was almost the size of a fist, into Sonia's hand without any explanation. Such a big pearl. This is too expensive. As someone who also pursues fashion, Sonia can see that this pearl is worth a lot of money, far better than those big pearls, ball pearls and so on. Suyi waved his hand and said, "It has nothing to do with value, this is a thank you gift." But Sonia didn't feel that she had done anything particularly helpful. "Just accept it, otherwise I will be angry." "Okay, thank you for your help. I'll treat you to delicious food another day. I won't disturb you for shopping." Suyi waved to Lu Lina and Sonia, not giving Sonia a chance to shirk again, and took it Pokemon food turned and left. Meow. Lu Sao waved to Sonia and Lu Lina, and followed Su Yi. What an interesting person. Is he really Alchemy Emperor's fellow disciple? Lu Lina asked curiously. Sonia solemnly put away the profound pearl that contained the deep sea, and said, it was also something not long ago. Emperor Dan seemed to be very optimistic about Su Yi. Very optimistic. As the sun set, the little poisonous demon bird fell asleep not long after eating. Su Yi took it back into the elf ball. That's right, the hatching of the little poisonous monster bird made Su Yi confirm that the monster eggs hatched from the monster eggs in the accompanying beast have the characteristics of Pokemon and can be conquered by ordinary Pokemon balls. After completing this, Su Yi took Lu Kao and walked on the street under the sunset. The atmosphere of the gym challenge is still there. Highlights of the competition are rotated on the surrounding billboards, and some advertisements are also inserted in real time to increase revenue. As expected of a giant that owns Galar's energy, transportation, construction and other industries, President Roz takes advantage of every opportunity to improve economic efficiency. All I can say is that he is indeed a man of unique insight who discovered the champion of Dan Emperor. Oh, the meeting is still there. Su Yi saw that the meeting was still lively, and even more colorful and lively with the arrival of night. Let's go shopping. It's definitely not because I saw Lu Lina today and wanted to buy some more small cards. Su Yi walked leisurely, tasting snacks and shopping. Among the many stalls, Su Yi saw a familiar figure. Of course, he was familiar with it from the game. In an unattended stall, a young pink-haired woman in strange clothes was lying on the table board. There were stacks of CDs and similar idle peripherals on the stall. Oh, brother, do you want to take a look? The man raised his head and greeted without any expectation. Su Yi picked up the CD and looked at the name, Bewitched Like a Fool by Clara. It's a bit embarrassing, like digging out 3 bedrooms and 1 living room with your feet. Bang, sure enough, she had seen this expression countless times, and Clara lay down again. Ahem. Su Yi relieved the embarrassment and said, Miss Clara, I heard that you want to become the leader of a poison gym. Clara raised her head in surprise and asked, you know, are you a fan of mine? After all, this was an immature idea. She had only revealed it on her online social platform. She never expected that she, an independent idol who had only sold 8 CDs, would be able to meet her fans here. Well, I guess. In order to continue the conversation, Su Yi told a white lie. Ha, you are very discerning. Clara's mood instantly improved. Let's get to the point, Miss Clara, do you really plan to become the poison gym leader? Su Yi asked seriously. Clara asked confused, what? Do you have a way to make me become the poison gym leader? Have you heard of Ma Shid Martial Arts School? Su Yi said with a smile. Ma Shid's Martial Arts Gym. Clara was confused, not knowing what this had to do with anything. Su Yi was helpless. As a former champion, Ma Shid is a legend who has held the Pokemon League Championship for 18 consecutive years. No one has been able to break his record until now. He is also the master of the current champion Dandy, who is respected by thousands of people. He is good at discovering the talent of a person as a good teacher. Nowadays, no one cares about it. The martial arts hall is deserted now, and no one takes the initiative to come to study. In the game, Clara learned about Ma Shid's martial arts gym after a long time from the late-night advertisement. Yes, the Clara in front of her is the protagonist's senior sister in Mask's martial arts gym in the Sword and Shield game. She thinks she does, but now she doesn't even know Mask's martial arts gym. You know Dan Emperor, right? Su Yi said. Clara nodded. Who doesn't know this? Ma Shid is Dan Emperor's master. Really? Clara said in surprise. You can find out if you search for it. Su Yi spread his hands. Clara doubtfully searched for Ma Shid's information on her mobile phone. Her eyes suddenly lit up when she saw the legendary experience and the discovery of Alchemy Emperor's talent. You mean, entering this martial arts gym to practice will allow me to become the leader of a poison-type gym? Clara asked with interest. Su Yi smiled and said, this is just an opportunity. Whoever you want to be, you need to work hard, just like a Pokemon cannot evolve without training. I understand all these principles, but an opportunity is an opportunity. Clara said excitedly. No matter what, the title of Ma Shi's apprentice is better than some independent idol that no one cares about. Okay, I will help you sign up. Su Yi nodded. Wait, sign up for me, or you? Clara only realized now that she didn't know or understand the person in front of her at all. My name is Su Yi, and I am also Ma Shi's apprentice. Su Yi introduced himself. In other words, you are a fellow disciple of Dan Emperor. Clara looked Su Yi up and down. Yes, Su Yi nodded. So, you must be very strong, can I try your level? Clara narrowed her eyes. Su Yi grinned and said, I'll be with you anytime. Okay, go to the fighting venue. Clara stood up and left. Su Yi asked doubtfully, are you ignoring the stall and the products on it? Clara laughed at herself. Now, I don't even believe that anyone would want this thing. Clara obviously also saw that Su Yi might have said that he was her fan because he wanted to attract her into the gym, and since he had decided to embark on the road of becoming a gym leader, these things were not important. Since you are Alchemy's fellow student, I will not show mercy. Clara chuckled, threw the Pokeball, and released her only Pokémon. Oh, a Galar Slowpoke lay on the ground, showing intelligent eyes. Su Yi smiled. Slowpoke can do nothing, but Slowpoke can't do anything. Clara is still very immature when it comes to training Pokémon. Then, what I am sending is the secret armor from the martial arts school. Come on, Disciple Shang, for the first battle. Su Yi dispatched the Disciple Shang who was entrusted to him by Ma Shi. Lu, Apprentice Shang appeared with great momentum, then pumped his fists to warm up, looking eager to try. Is this the secret weapon of your martial arts school? Clara cheered up. Strike first. Slowpoke, use the dissolving liquid. Clara waved her fist. Slowpoke opened its mouth and spit out a ball of purple liquid towards the bear apprentice. Use Yan Wei, dodge and attack directly. Su Yi commanded. Lu, Apprentice Bear dodged the dissolving liquid with great skill, dodged, and struck Slowpoke's head with his arm shrouded in white light. Oh, Slowpoke was stunned for a moment, and then it felt dizzy. Su Yi was a little surprised. You still have a strong head. No, it's too slow. 2 times. Slowpoke, use Yan. Clara gritted her teeth. Su Yi shouted. Don't get hit. Run around it and avoid it. Slowpoke turned its head and yawned at the bear apprentice behind him, but the bear apprentice quickly reacted and avoided the yawn. Use Yan Wei again. Taking this opportunity, Disciple Shang succeeded again in his attack. Oh, Slowpoke suddenly became dizzy and staggered. It's too fast. Then use telekinesis, Clara said anxiously. The superpower system can just restrain the fighting system of Disciple Shang, but what a mistake. Disciple Shang, see through it. Su Yi smiled confidently. Grr, the apprentice bear's eyes shined brightly. When the Slowpoke looked directly at the apprentice bear and wanted to catch it with telekinesis, the apprentice bear twisted his body and narrowly avoided the lock of telekinesis. It's over. Yan Wei. Grr. Disciple Shang flew forward and struck out Yan Wei with all his strength. Oh, Slowpoke fainted and fell to the ground, unable to fight. His Pokémon didn't hit him at all, and he only used 2 moves. Clara was startled and took back Slowpoke. In fact, it was Clara's lack of combat experience, coupled with the lack of strength of Slowpoke. Su Yi had never seen any battle scene bigger than this, so he took it all calmly and easily. Moreover, Su Yi has hunting experience in the game and has been adventuring in the new world for a while. He is much better at controlling timing on the battlefield. Grr, the apprentice bear was very happy. He turned his head, looked at Su Yi and stretched out his hand. Su Yi smiled and high-fived it, then encouraged, well done. Gulu, Gulu, Disciple Shang said something eagerly. Su Yi looked at Lukao. Mao Mao scratched his ears and said uncertainly, Apprentice Shang seems to be saying that he wants to take risks with you, meow. Well, that should be it, meow. Sorry. Su Yi knelt down, looked at Apprentice Shang, and said, I ignored your feelings. The adventures ahead may be difficult and dangerous, so be prepared. Lu, Apprentice Shang made an encouraging gesture. Okay, Su Yi smiled. Senior brother Su Yi, Clara said awkwardly, when can I enter the martial arts gym to practice? Don't worry, you want to become the poison gym leader, right? Su Yi said and took out a capture ball. Yes, because the poison system fits my image very well, and I like it myself. Clara nodded. In fact, another thing is, you think the poison system is not popular and has few competitors, so it is easy to succeed. Su Yi complained secretly. Since you chose the poison system, I wonder if this guy will accept you. Su Yi opened the capture ball and released the Centipede King. Guga. As soon as King Centipede appeared, he looked at Su Yi angrily. I'm sorry, King Centipede. In fact, I have been thinking about how to place you. I originally wanted to release you into the forest in the interior of Galar, but now, you have a new choice. This is Clara. Her goal is to become the leader of a poison-type gym. With me, you basically have no chance to fight. However, if you follow her, you can go on the road to becoming stronger by challenging different opponents. Su Yi said. She may be immature in battle now and has some minor problems, but she has the talent of poison system. It's up to you how to choose. Clara said angrily. Forget it about immaturity, what do you mean by minor problems? The Centipede King lowered his head to look at Clara, lost in thought. For it, fighting every day and then occupying food is a daily routine. So, why not go outside to see the wider world and challenge stronger opponents? Guga. King Centipede nodded, then picked up the capture ball in Su Yi's hand and handed it to Clara. Is such a powerful Pokémon entrusted to me like this? Clara said in surprise. You have to take good care of it and strive for its approval. Su Yi said. I will definitely become a good partner with it. Clara said seriously. After exchanging contact information and informing the location of the martial arts school, Su Yi said goodbye to Clara, then called Master Mi and informed her about Clara. Although she has some minor problems, I believe she will change in our martial arts school. Yi said with a smile. Yeah, Su Yi nodded. Clara's original intention of becoming a gym leader was actually very simple, she just wanted to be popular, but she didn't work hard enough. In the game, she even used an off-board move to defeat the players, but she was punished, and she also woke up, took the initiative to accept the punishment, and reformed. In general, he is a person who has a unique dream and is somewhat unwilling to work hard, but he also has his own persistence. Since he is someone he knows in the game, he doesn't have any bad feelings after meeting him. Su Yi doesn't mind helping him, and he does as he pleases without any burden. As the night progressed, Su Yi came to the Pokémon Center. The lights were still bright here, and Miss Joy was busy treating the injured Pokémon. Su Yi walked to the friendly store nearby and sold 2 bright pearls in exchange for a considerable sum of money. Then, Su Yi came to a store. Before the money was warm, he spent it to buy something that he had noticed not long ago. This thing is quite expensive, Su Yi said looking at the camping set in his hand. That's right, it's the Pokémon camping set in the game. It includes a series of camping items such as tents, bedding, kitchen utensils, tables, chairs, and benches. This way, he doesn't have to hunt for leather and laboriously sew it by hand in order to set up a camp. Made a tent. Moreover, the high-tech products are not inferior to the high-quality materials of Monster Hunter World. The most important thing is convenience. If it is more expensive, just pick more pearls and so on. So, Blue Coral Terrace is a treasure house. Su Yi admired. Su Yi did not choose to stay at the Pokémon Center, but returned to the coral platform, a small coral cave. He unfolded the camping tent and lay down with Lu Kao in the soft and comfortable sleeping bag. The place is still too narrow. There is not enough space to release the accompanying beasts and cooks. We will have to find another place to set up the camp later. Su Yi thought. By the way, it's night now, and the weather is fine. You might meet the Queen of Swinging Eels. It would be a pity to sleep now. Su Yi sat up and greeted Lu Kao. Want to see the night view, Lotto? Lottom flew out with interest. Let's go. The coral platform at night is truly dreamy and gorgeous. Do you think King Centipede finally has a home? In fact, Clara will later subdue a centipede, and then evolve into the Centipede King on the Isle of Armor. Therefore, it is not that the Centipede King has a destiny, but that the destiny of another Centipede King has been transferred to this one, sad. After getting out of the narrow coral cave, it was already a deep and quiet night outside, and the night wind blew by, bringing a slight chill. Su Yi released the burning bug and held it in his arms. Gee, the burning insect also enjoyed Su Yi's embrace. He was held in his arms like this, looking at the mysterious scenery in front of him with curiosity and excitement. Apprentice Shang, let's take a walk together. Su Yi released Apprentice Shang. Lulu. Apprentice Shang was very happy to watch the scenery together. At night, the aromatic pterosaurs are no longer active. They rest in the high coral forests. The coral forests are no longer noisy during the day. At this moment, the flying black hat flying in the night wind finally showed its dazzling brilliance. The flying black hats emitting light blue light dot the landing coral platform like stars in the night sky. This scene is like the luminous jellyfish roaming among the corals in the deep sea. The name of land and ocean is extremely appropriate at this moment. Buzz. The guide insect from Su Yi's waist slowly flew out, guiding the target very conspicuously in the night. It's pot clams. Tonight's supper is abalone. Su Yi smacked his lips. The kettle clam is a pink barnacle about the size of a football. There is a small opening at the top of the barnacle, from where you can see the tender and plump barnacle abalone in the kettle clam. During the day, we could finally explore the places that we had not had time to explore due to the arrival of Sakura Fire Dragon. This time we could explore leisurely. There's a meow here, Mao Mao said excitedly. Grr. Apprentice Shang volunteered, cracked open the hard kettle shell with a split tile, and took out the barnacled abalone inside. This one is so big. Is it a hidden barnacle abalone? Su Yi looked at the unusually plump and attractive abalone, and saliva secreted from his mouth unconsciously. Well done. Su Yi praised Apprentice Shang a few words, and then put these barnacle abalones, which are both mountain delicacies and seafood, into items. Continue walking forward, crossing the bridge made of corals and vines, and come to the place where we last saw the swaying eels. Su Yi shushed, signaling for everyone to be quiet, then squatted down and slowly approached the swaying eels. Although it is night, the swaying eels are still swaying in the wind, and the flying black hats in the sky flash and shine for them like the lights of a dance hall. And in the center, surrounded by green and blue swaying eels, an orange-red swaying eel stands out from the crowd. It's the queen of swaying eels. Su Yi motioned to Rotom to take a video of these creatures dancing together. Climbing up the surrounding rocky peaks, Su Yi was able to overlook part of the land coral platform on a small open platform. In the distance in the sky was a large group of flying black hats, and not far away could also see a small coral forest. Further away, an airship can be seen crashing in the southwest of the Grand Canyon, close to the circular Grand Canyon surrounding the landing coral platform, but far away from the landing coral platform. Aibo, that's the airship from the third phase of the regiment. Su Yi picked up the telescope and looked into the distance. The airship was stuck head down on the platform, and landed alone in the corner of the Lu Coral platform. About 20 years ago, after the first and second phase groups had established a foothold in the New World, the guild sent a third phase group of about 100 people to follow and investigate the Steel Dragon's ancient dragon crossing to the New World. This investigation team, mainly composed of scholars and researchers, was immediately attracted by the ecology here after arriving in the New World, and became extremely curious about the ecological environment north of the Grand Canyon. So under the whimsical suggestion of the leader of the third group, they transformed the guild's ferry into an airship, and finally flew across the Grand Canyon like thousands of swords. But just when they entered the Lu Coral platform, they were attacked by the Fengjiao dragon, and finally fell to the north of the canyon and approximately southwest of the Lu Coral platform. This difficulty lasted for 20 years, but this did not stop the enthusiasm of the scholars at all. Instead, they enjoyed the days of conducting research in the ecologically diverse place of the coral platform. What's more, most of the researchers here are dragon people. They have a longer lifespan than humans. A mere 20 years is not too far away for them. It seems to be Meow. The legendary third group Meow. Lu Kao said. I really admire them for being able to study for 20 years under such circumstances. Su Yi sighed. Let's take a look at the coral rock forest in the distance. And just as Su Yi, Lu Sao and the Pokémon were admiring the platform under the night sky, in the distance, in the coral forest, a flash of light was like a star that suddenly lit up in the night sky. Although it was small, it was extremely conspicuous. Who is partying at night? Su Yi looked through the binoculars. On the soft coral platform of the coral forest, a dazzling bird was dancing around, as if it was fighting something. However, due to the obstruction of the coral tree and the darkness of night, Su Yi could only see the blue-purple figure of the dizzy bird. Why don't you call me for a party? Su Yi noted the direction, quickly climbed down the cliff using hooks and vines, and then ran towards the coral forest. Wow! The dizzy bird screamed, opened its claws, and pounced on an orc that looked like a lynx. The short cat swooped down in a hurry and escaped. Not far away, 2 cats fell to the ground clutching their wounds. On the side, 3 cat lizards closed their eyes and fainted on the ground. Meow! The cat that could still fight roared fiercely, but the bone weapon in its hand had broken. Wow wow! Dazzling Bird looked at the enemy who was stubbornly resisting, and opened the luminous film. The luminous film flashed rapidly to warm up. Meow! Mau Mau quickly closed his eyes. Sparkling lights at night. Is this ethical? A loud shout came, followed by a sharp stone. Clatter! The stone accurately hit the luminous film of the Dazzling Bird, and the dazzling flash that was still brewing was instantly interrupted, and due to the attack on its weak point, the Dazzling Bird screamed in pain and turned its eyes angrily to the incoming person. We meet again, little dizzy bird. Su Yi smiled and walked over slowly. Meow! Mau Mau looked at the visitor, a little surprised. Su Yi meow. It's an orc meow that is very similar to Elu cat. But it's a little different, meow. Lu Sao said in surprise as she looked at the cat that looked 10 or even 9 times like herself. That's the Deter tribe, also known as the Bobcat tribe. It's one of the orc races living in the New World. Su Yi said with interest. Unexpectedly, he met Detail here, and seeing the red hair on the cat's hands and feet and the outline of its ears, he was able to confirm that it was the Detail, the platform performers living on the Coral Plateau. When he saw the fallen platform playing Cat and Cat Lizard, he also guessed what happened. The Mesa performers have the ability to communicate with the Cat Lizard. They can tame the Cat Lizard and make it their partner, and they can go out hunting and fighting together. The Cat Lizard Dragon and the Dazzling Bird often clashed, so the platform performers in front of them were attacked by the Dazzling Bird without any accident. Ibo, Apprentice Shang, give them these medicines to help them treat their friends. Su Yi took out the recovery medicine, life dust and some bandages and handed them to Lu Kao and Apprentice Shang. Hulu. Apprentice Shang patted his chest, as if he was wrapping his arms around me. As for you, I won't bully you. Come on, Tickling Bird. Su Yi sent out Tickling Bird, which is the same bird dragon species as Dazzling Bird and has a similar size. Gah! As soon as Tickle Bird appeared and saw Dazzle Bird, which was about the same size as him, he immediately became full of momentum. I couldn't defeat the Misty Claw before, but now I can't defeat you. Looking at the fighting spirit of Tickling Bird, Su Yi let it go on its own. This is the momentum, Tickling Bird, go up and slap them both in the face, so that they will remember it for a long time. Gah! The scratching bird made a loud sound, puffed out its chest, and used its claws to scratch wildly. Not to be outdone, the dizzy bird also waved its claws. Immediately, the 2 claw attacks hit each other, but Tickling Bird has the blessing of moves, and the damage is even better. Snapped. Su Yi patted his forehead, and the 2 bird dragon species swung their claws at each other, just like 2 shrews fighting. Forget it, I'll be the one to take charge, scratch the bird and hit hard with the rock. Su Yi sighed. Tickle Bird quickly picked up a solid rock made of rock energy, and then threw it at Dazzler Bird. Dazzling Bird was not stupid, he did not choose to be tough, but nimbly dodged. Tickling Bird raised his hand and hit it again, and Dazzling Bird dodged again. The 2 bird dragon species jumped left and right like a disco. Su Yi smiled. Okay, the fun is over. Tick the bird and smash it out. Su Yi shouted. Gah! Just when Dazzling Bird dodged again, Tickling Bird obeyed the command and threw the rock violently. Dazzling Bird had no time to react and was hit in the head. Wow! The dizzy bird staggered, shook its head in severe pain, and turned around and ran away without saying a word. Run away now. You ran pretty fast. Where are your usual bravery as a war reporter? Su Yi said in shock. I saw the dizzy bird jumping on its feet, running very fast, and then quickly climbed up the vines and rocks with its sharp claws, and disappeared among the rock walls and rocks. Su Yi didn't rush to chase him. Anyway, the guide insect remembered the aura of the dizzy bird. He walked up to the performing cat and asked, How are you doing? Is the injury serious? Meow, thank you, meow. The cat stood up, looked at his companion who woke up, and thanked Su Yi. By the way, why do you guys come out in the middle of the night? Su Yi asked. Unexpectedly, This cat, which did not flinch when facing a monster more than 10 times bigger than itself, actually said with some panic, "A scary guy came to the platform recently, meow. We don't dare to do it during the day. Come out and hunt cats." Scary guy. Yeah, it's a guy with a red light, meow. It has sharp teeth and claws. It's so scary, meow. Several of our companions are injured, meow. The cat waved its 2 paws and said a little helplessly. Red light, fangs and claws. Suyi clicked his chin, unable to guess what kind of monster it was for a moment. Grr. Apprentice Bear walked over, and the cats from the performing clan behind him surrounded him and Lukao gratefully. Your companions are not in danger anymore. Take these medicines and give them to your other companions. Suyi took out some medicines again and gave them to this brave and lovely cat. Thank you so much, meow. My name is Coral, what's your name? The lynx named Coral said gratefully. Suyi smiled and said, my name is Suyi. Suyi, you are so powerful, meow. You can actually tame a monster as big as a dizzy bird, meow. Coral said with admiration. A single dazzling bird made them miserable. The tall man in front of them was actually able to control a monster like that, and then beat the dazzling bird away in 2 or 3 blows. Seeing the true admiration in Mao Mao's eyes, Suyi said humbly, this is nothing. Unexpectedly, Coral said happily, Suyi, meow, I want to invite you to our tribe, meow. You are our savior, meow. Looking at the innocent and kind Coral, Suyi did not refuse, and he was also curious about what Deter's tribe was like. Due to expressive issues in the game, there are generally only 3 cats in Detel's tribe, which does not reflect the feeling of a tribe at all. Following the Coral, Suyi passed through a narrow gap and came to a narrow path on the edge of a rock wall, next to which was an abyss. After walking dozens of steps, the vision suddenly became clear. In the space in front of you, the waterfall rushed down and formed a pool. The walking lantern fish hurriedly avoided seeing the person coming, but the swimming fish in the water were still swimming leisurely. It was surrounded by gorgeous coral rocks, and there were piles of white coral beside the pool, shell. Following Mao Mao to climb up the rock wall and platform above, there was another small waterfall. Suyi followed Mao Mao into the waterfall, and behind the water curtain, there was another scene. On countless connected but undulating mesas, countless mesa performers built huts out of firs, corals and even rocks, and lived in this hidden place like a paradise. Everyone, meow, we have a guest, meow. Coral shouted loudly, and all the cats immediately gathered around him curiously, looking at Suyi with curiosity. Meow, this friend named Suyi helped us fight off the dazzling bird, meow. He also gave us medicinal herbs, meow. Coral took out the big bag of medicine given by Suyi. Meow. Suddenly, a dozen injured cats ran over happily and received medicine from Coral. For a moment, Suyi was enthusiastically surrounded by cats. On the periphery, there were several cats happily playing musical instruments. In this atmosphere, Suyi would believe it if you said it was the new year. These cats always seem so kind and trustworthy. It's time to have a party, meow. Coral seemed to be the leader here, and his voice echoed every call. The cats took out food such as meat and fish from their nests, grilled them around the campfire, and then handed them to Suyi. However, it seems that the cats, who have not hunted well for several days because of unknown monsters, do not have enough food. But even so, they still try their best to express their gratitude. Let's have fun at the banquet. Suyi took out a lot of the barnacle abalone harvested tonight, various meats, and some fruits collected previously. Meow. How can I ask for so much food from you, meow? Coral said uneasily. In the tribe, food is the most important thing, and Suyi took out so much food at once, and it was worried that Suyi would have no food to eat in the future. It doesn't matter. Suyi smiled. At worst, we'll go to the ancient tree forest. Meow. Coral meowed, and then a large group of cats gathered around Suyi, took out various musical instruments, and began to play a large ensemble. A dinner party where guests and host enjoyed themselves. Although the cooking method was very primitive, it still had a flavor. Meow, this is a carefully crafted instrument here. I hope you can accept it, meow. Coral handed an instrument like a horn to Lukao. Thank you, meow. Lukao happily took it. Let me teach you how to play. This is what we are best at, meow. We can provide all kinds of help to our friends, meow. Coral said to Lukao. Seeing Coral teaching Lu Kao to play, Suyi said curiously, "Is this a motivational instrument?" In the game, if you establish friendship with the Mesa performers, they will give your follower cat a piece of equipment called an inspiring instrument. During hunting, the follower cat will play musical instruments and provide various buffs to the hunter, from basic attack and defense, to increased abnormal resistance, to detoxification and damage reduction. After the lively banquet, Suyi took out his spare sleeping bag, and Lu Kao slept on the ground in the open space of the tribe. Early the next morning, Lu Kao happily ran to Suyi, who was preparing food for the Pokémon, and said as if offering a treasure, "Suyi, meow. I have learned the instrument of the platform performer tribe, meow." "So fast," Suyi said in surprise. In the game, the follower cat can understand the mechanics as soon as he learns it, but can it be that fast in reality? "I learned to whistle for a long time. Is it because humans and cats have different physiques?" Lu Kao meowed, took out the conch-like French horn, and started playing it. At first, the sound was a little chaotic, but after a while, a melodious and resonant ancient tune was played, and Suyi suddenly became energetic. The slight sleepiness he felt when he just got up was instantly eliminated, and he became energetic and energetic. Hulu, Grumble, the burning bug and the bear disciples were also refreshed when they heard the music, and then they made energetic sounds, and their bodies were surrounded by faint phantoms of musical notes. Is this a move? Looking at this unusual special effect, Suyi quickly opened the hunting guide and checked Lu Cao's move list. Sure enough, there was one more move in his list. Inspiring performance. Play different music to provide different effects for yourself and teammates. 1. Offensive music. Improve one level of understanding and one level of physical attack or special attack according to the strengths of the person being strengthened. 2. Defense song. Obtain secondary defense or special defense according to the strengths of the person being enhanced. 3. Restore music. Restore a certain amount of physical strength. 4. Dispel the music. Remove abnormal status and gain immunity to abnormality for a period of time. Such a powerful auxiliary effect. Suyi couldn't help but be a little stunned. The key is that this move can be released to Lu Kao himself and his teammates at the same time. The only disadvantage is that it needs to be performed, which means that the release action of this skill may be a bit long and easily interrupted. In the ever-changing Pokémon battle, Lu Kao may not have a chance to use this move, but it can be used during hunting. At that time, the cat will play BGM behind and buff the companion beast. The companion beast will roar and fight, and there is an internal smell. Ha! "Suyi, how are you, meow?" Lu Cao said expectantly. "Not bad. It sounds good, but the song is a good one, but it's best to change it to something by our hunters." Suyi nodded, and then patiently taught Lu Cao's song, Proof of Heroes. In the early morning at Lu Coral Terrace, there was a gentle breeze carrying pink snowflakes. After leaving the paradise of the platform performers, Coral volunteered and took Suyi and Lu Cao to the nest of the dizzy bird. "I know that guy's lair very well." Coral, who was riding on the cat lizard, patted his chest and said. Suyi and Lu Cao rode on the backs of the birds, following the corals through the coral ocean on the platform. Seeing Hualu's familiar appearance, Suyi couldn't help but suspect that the platform performers had probably been thinking about doing it for a long time. Buzz. Before they reached the place where they met the dizzy bird last time, the guide insect flew out and attached to a claw mark. Wait a minute. Suyi got off the bird and looked closer. He saw that the claw mark was long and narrow, with more than 6 claw marks. This claw mark is a bit strange. Suyi frowned slightly, as if he had caught something. Walking a little further forward, several tracks were dyed a conspicuous green by the guide insects attached to them. The tracks were in the shape of 4-finger claws, and the impressions on the palms and fingertips were in the shape of balls. "Isn't this the meatball paw print of the Misty Claw?" Suyi said in surprise. "Is there another Misty Claw coming to the coral platform?" "Wow, wow!" Above the platform, the fierce cry of the dizzy bird came. "Let's go." Suyi rode on the scratching bird and ran following the sound, while the guide insect quickly pointed in the direction Suyi ran as if it had found the target. "I found you, little dizzy bird." Suyi rode the scratching bird up the vines, climbed up the coral rock walls step by step, and came to a vast and huge platform. However, the sight in front of him instantly made Suyi vigilant. All he could see was that the dazzling bird was covered in tragic scars. It was chirping in panic and looking around, as if it was wary of some existence that made it extremely frightened. Something's not right, there's a powerful monster nearby. Coral, Ibo, be careful, Su Yi shouted in a low voice, looking around quickly. Clatter. The blood-red claws clenched on the edge of the cliff. Dazzling bird looked up in horror. Su Yi followed its line of sight and looked up at the high platform above. A dark evil ghost stared with red eyes, black smoke escaped from its mouth, and dark red dragon energy danced and shone in the black smoke like lightning. It's not the ferocious claw dragon, it's its subspecies, the ferocious claw dragon. Su Yi instantly became alert, and the bird under him couldn't help but take 2 steps back in fear when he saw such a terrifying beast. That's the guy, meow, Coral said with a trembling voice. Howling, the ferocious claw dragon let out a terrifying roar, and the dragon's energy surged and dispersed in its mouth, like a purgatory ghost crawling out of hell. Then, the ferocious claw dragon jumped down from a high place. Seeing this, the dazzling bird turned around and ran towards the edge of the platform. However, the fierce claw dragon burst out with astonishing speed like a cheetah. It arrived first and pounced on the dizzy bird fiercely. The sharp teeth and ferocious mouth took one bite, and Su Yi could clearly hear the sound of bones breaking. The poor dizzy bird, its neck showed a creepy bend, its eyes were filled with horror and it lost its voice. My mobile flash bomb, Su Yi secretly lamented. Call. The fierce claw picked up the dizzy bird in its mouth and threw the dizzy bird's body off the platform like trash, as if it had finally solved a bug that had offended it. The corpse of the dizzy bird fell into the miasma and became the meat of the creatures in the miasma valley. You are so cruel, you didn't even leave any material for me, Su Yi said with an ugly expression. Lulu Lulu. Only then did the ferocious claw dragon turn its head and let out a low roar while looking at Su Yi with its fierce red eyes. Base. The blood-colored vicious claws were fully unfolded, forming 10 hooked claws. The silver-black skin was dotted with dots of blood red, and the tail behind him looked like green-purple vicious jade. Yeah, I'm being targeted by this evil spirit. Su Yi tensed up and quickly reloaded the catapult. Just as Su Yi was looking for an escape route, the capture ball on his waist suddenly opened, and the misty claw roared out and landed on the platform. At that moment, the look of the ferocious claw dragon that just wanted to hunt its prey changed. It flashed with dragon energy and let out a terrifying roar. Its red eyes looked at the ferocious claw dragon with murderous intent. The misty claw dragon also instantly entered a ferocious state. From the back of its head to its neck, the gap between the red scales and muscles lit up with a red light like lava, and at the same time, the white air in its mouth was exhaled violently. As soon as they met, the original species and the subspecies entered into a state of endless fighting. Bloody Claw Dragon, is this guy your enemy? Su Yi asked doubtfully, or is it that the brutal Claw Dragon and the ferocious Claw Dragon are naturally incapable of dealing with them? On the platform, the breeze blew, and the 2 ferocious beasts entered their strongest state, their fangs and claws ready to move. Misery Claw Dragon, your injury is not completely healed yet, be careful of its dragon energy bite and dragon breath. Seeing that the misty claw dragon was so eager to fight, Su Yi immediately entered the state and planned to command the battle. However, the ferocious claw dragon did not listen to Su Yi's command at all. The ferocious claw dragon and the ferocious claw dragon moved almost at the same time. The blood-red claws and the white claws tore through the air and unleashed a brutal blow. Base. The sharp claws pierced each other's flesh, cutting bloody wounds. The blood makes the desire to kill unprecedentedly high. The ferocious claw dragon stretched up its body and opened its huge mouth with sharp teeth and ferocious teeth. With the dark red dragon energy surging in its mouth, the ferocious claw dragon bit out a vicious blow. The ferocious claw dragon took a small step back to avoid it, and the ferocious claw dragon shot out the fierce claws. The clawed dragon's head swung away. Bah! Scales were flying, skin and flesh rolled, and a ferocious scar appeared on the face of the ferocious claw dragon. The ferocious claw dragon exhaled a breath of dragon energy, and cold murderous intent burst out from its flashing eyes. At that moment, the ferocious claw dragon violently rose up, biting the ferocious claw dragon's neck from bottom to top with its huge mouth, then picked it up like this, twisted its body, and threw the ferocious claw dragon under its body. At the same time, a pair of the sharp claws held down the misty claw tightly, actually wanting to bite it to death. Tickling the bird, hit hard with a solid rock. Su Yi shouted. Tickling bird shouted to encourage himself, then picked up the energy rock and threw it heavily. Bang! The rock shattered with a heavy blow, and the ferocious claw dragon was forced to let go of its mouth and looked angrily at Su Yi and Zunyao. At that moment, the ferocious claw dragon under him suddenly burst out with strength and got rid of the pressure of the ferocious claw dragon. Hoo ho ho! The misty claw gasped violently, and blood began to flow from the hideous wounds on its body. Big ferocious jaw dragon, prepare to interfere with the enemy. Su Yi took out the capture ball, intending to use the paralytic hand of big ferocious jaw dragon to assist the ferocious claw dragon. Unexpectedly, the ferocious claw dragon turned its head and roared at Su Yi, and then assumed an offensive posture towards the ferocious claw dragon again. Although the misty claw recognized Su Yi for his treatment, he did not think that Su Yi could interfere in its battle. Su Yi was startled and said angrily, "You are so stubborn. Do you know that you can't win now?" Before he finished speaking, Su Yi was interrupted by the roar of the misty claw dragon. "Can't win? I do not understand." The ferocious claw dragon roared in a low voice and stepped slowly with tense muscles, as did the ferocious claw dragon. The two paced each other, looking for flaws and opportunities. "I understand." Su Yi took back the capture ball of the great Duregnathus, and also put the scratching bird back into the ball. At that moment, blood spattered from the laceration on the head of the vicious claw dragon. It bared its teeth when it was stung, and the vicious claw dragon seized the opportunity and pounced again. However, after all, the body strength of the ferocious claw dragon has been strengthened with the help of dragon energy, and the ferocious claw dragon's injuries have not healed. In the close fight, the ferocious claw dragon once again fell into a disadvantage. The ferocious claw relied on its strength to suppress the ferocious claw and bit its neck. "I understand your pride in wanting to win with your own hands, but I feel the same way. I also want to win." Su Yi suddenly started running, and the projector projected a flying claw, which immediately hooked the head of the suppressing ferocious claw dragon. Aha! The projector pulled Su Yi and quickly hooked it on the head of the ferocious claw dragon. The fierce clawed dragon glanced at this overestimating creature with its ferocious eyes, bit into the huge mouth of the fierce clawed dragon and let out a series of low roars. "Let me go." Su Yi put the projectile on the head of the misty claw without fear and shouted angrily. In an instant, all the pine bombs made of flint stones were fired from the catapult, hitting the head of the ferocious claw dragon. Bang! The flames bloomed, and the ferocious claw dragon let go of its mouth, roaring in pain, and the wound on its head that was torn by the ferocious claw dragon became scorched black. Su Yi fell from the head of the ferocious claw dragon and jumped to the side of the ferocious claw dragon. "I hope you can trust my command and my judgment. Let's win together." Su Yi stared into the eyes of the misty claw dragon. Roar! Roar! The misty claw responded to Su Yi's determination with an passionate roar. "Our battle has just begun." Su Yi stood side by side with the ferocious claw dragon, looking at the furious ferocious claw dragon. There has never been a reason why the original species cannot defeat the subspecies. The furious ferocious claw dragon jumped up and swept forward with its sharp claws. "Dodge sideways, and then, laceration claw." Su Yi shouted. The misty claw calmly dodged the furious claw attack, then swung its sharp claws that emitted a forest white light, and tore toward the head again. Ouch! The injured ferocious claw dragon became even more furious, and the dragon energy in its mouth became more and more violent. Su Yi watched the ferocious claw dragon take off and immediately ordered, "Let's jump up too, and then use the iron tail." The fierce claw dragon spit out dark red dragon energy bombs from its mouth, but it was just dodged by the misfortune claw dragon's jump. Then, the misfortune claw dragon twisted and flicked its tail in the air. The metallic luster-covered tail hit the dire claw dragon hard on the head. Finally, the ferocious claw dragon, which used a large amount of dragon energy and was hit hard on the head one after another, let out a mournful cry, and the dragon energy in its mouth exploded with a bang, and then went out. Pursue victory. Laceration claw. Su Yi held the claw in his hand. The misty claw roared and opened its sharp white claws to deliver an extremely tearing blow. The laceration claw instantly detonated the laceration state on the fierce claw dragon's body, and a large amount of blood spilled out. In an instant, the fierce claw dragon's head was dripping with blood. Ouch! The ferocious claw dragon roared and immediately ran towards the bottom of the platform. Catch it, don't let it eat the meat to replenish its dragon energy. Su Yi rode on the miserable claw dragon, and the dew grass immediately grabbed Su Yi's back. Coral, the next battle is not something you can participate in. You should go back first and wait for my good news, Su Yi said to Coral, who was still frightened. Coral nodded and said, I understand, meow. I wish you a triumphant victory, meow. Let's go. As the ferocious claws ran, it moved its nose, sniffing out the ferocious claws' scent. On his back, Su Yi took out the life dust and sprinkled it on the wound of the misty claw dragon to help it heal. It's Lu Miao when we came here, Lu Sao said, looking at the familiar scenery around him. That scratch. Su Yi thought about the ecology of the ferocious claw dragon and suddenly understood something. The vicious claw dragon will mark the place where it put down its meat with claw marks. Its meat is hidden in that place, Su Yi analyzed. The misty claw dragon was very fast. Under Su Yi's temporary treatment, its injuries stabilized a lot and its pace gradually became steady. But when they arrived at the location of the claw marks, they found no sign of the vicious claw dragon. Instead, there were tracks heading towards the coral forest. What is the ferocious claw dragon doing? Su Yi was puzzled. What's over there in the coral forest? Fang pterosaur. Is the Dionysus going to hunt? But it clearly has pieces of meat that can restore its dragon energy state. With doubts, Su Yi commanded the misty claw dragon to chase after him again. In the coral forest, the Dionysus impatiently searched for the smell of the meat it had hidden. When the search was fruitless, it looked at the fang pterosaur flying in the coral forest. Following the traces of the ferocious claw dragon and under the guidance of the guide insect, Su Yi suddenly discovered traces of other monsters on the way. Stop! Su Yi shouted to stop the misty claw dragon and walked towards the trace. Oh my god, why is it you again? Su Yi looked at the familiar footprints of a three-pronged beast and dragon species, and a dark green figure of a ferocious big loofah flashed in his mind. The misty claw also smelled the smell that disgusted it, and let out an angry growl. Is it the Tyrannosaurus that climbed up from the Miasma Valley? Or another one? Su Yi murmured. He secretly became vigilant, and then continued to move forward. Along the way, the footprints of the Direclaw and the Tyrannosaurus appeared frequently. Su Yi couldn't help but feel a little funny. Wasn't this a show? After a while, Su Yi, who had just arrived at the edge of the coral forest, heard fierce fighting and roars. What a guy! Su Yi exclaimed. In the coral forest at this moment, the Tyrannosaurus climbed onto the back of the Tyrannosaurus without fear, tearing ferociously with its bloody claws, while the Tyrannosaurus shook its body angrily, trying to shake it off. Come down. It's the Tyrannosaurus again, meow. Why is it everywhere, meow? Apparently Lu Kao was also deeply impressed by this monster. Don't move. That terror Tyrannosaurus guy is not easy to mess with. Su Yi held down the Tyrannosaurus that was about to move, and couldn't help but feel ashamed in his heart. The Tyrannosaurus was really brave. The battle in the forest changed. Seeing that the Tyrannosaurus couldn't get rid of the Diarchionosaurus, it rushed to the edge of the coral rock and used the rock wall to collide with the Diarchionosaurus on its back. But the Tyrannosaurus still clung to the back of the Tyrannosaurus, and the Tyrannosaurus used its iron mountain support continuously like a frenzy, slamming into the rock wall. For a moment, gravel flew, and the Tyrannosaurus let out a painful cry, roared, and was finally knocked down. Little Haitzi, you're very cruel. Su Yi felt hurt just looking at it. Roar, roar, roar. The terror Tyrannosaurus spurted white air from its nostrils, and the skin on its neck and chest emitted an ominous red light. It entered a state of rage. It opened its big mouth and bit fiercely at the fallen Tyrannosaurus, with ragged teeth. The huge mouth bit the waist and abdomen of the ferocious claw dragon, and then picked it up. Officer Luffa picked up his favorite dragon-attributed baton, the vicious claw's baton. Did you see it? This is a lesson learned from the past. Su Yi educated the misty claw dragon on the side. The Tyrannosaurus roared in dissatisfaction, but looking at the miserable appearance of the Tyrannosaurus and recalling its own powerlessness when facing the Tyrannosaurus, it opened its intelligence and understood that although it was unwilling to do so, it is difficult to compete with the Dino Tyrannosaurus on its own strength. This Dino Tyrannosaurus is not the one from the Valley of Miasma. It doesn't have the scars on its face that you scratched. However, this Dino Tyrannosaurus is smaller than the one from the Valley of Miasma, but it's not something you can deal with now. Just when Su Yi was analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of the Tyrannosaurus and the Tyrannosaurus, Officer Luffa waved his baton and wreaked havoc on the greening of the mainland coral platform. The coral reefs that had accumulated for an unknown period of time were blocked and smashed. Finally, the Tyrannosaurus Rex threw the claws from its mouth heavily. With a bang, the ferocious claw dragon smashed the rock and fell next to Su Yi and the ferocious claw dragon. The smashed rock revealed them hiding behind. Young Dinotyrannosaurus, did you kill this Tyrannicus or this Tyrannicus? Roar. The terror Tyrannosaurus looked at the Tyrannosaurus, then at the Tyrannosaurus, and then let out a violent roar, and the red light on its muscles became brighter and brighter. Get out, Su Yi shouted, took the dew grass and climbed onto the back of the ferocious claw dragon, turned around and ran away. The ferocious claw dragon on the side also left without hesitation, and the two ran side by side through the layers of mountains. On the coral mesa, behind me, the roar of the running terror Tyrannosaurus clenched. Call. In the windy sky, a wisp of cherry blossoms was attracted by the noisy noise on the ground. She circled down and let out a roar to defend her territory. Roar. The Sakura fire dragon breathed out its fiery dragon breath from a high position, blocking the path of the tornado and the fierce claw. The terror Tyrannosaurus behind them took this opportunity to catch up. There is a flying dragon in front, a terror king behind, and miasma-filled abyss on both sides. 4 monsters gather on this small piece of coral platform. Howling. The fierce claw dragon roared fiercely and was ready for a life and death fight, but the fierce claw dragon had already taken action. It charged up and jumped high into the air to pounce on the Sakura fire dragon. The Sakura fire dragon flapped its wings to raise its height and dodge. It launched a pounce, but also opened its path. The Misty Claw saw the opportunity and broke through the interception. The sharp claws of the Misty Claw climbed up the rock and were about to jump to the platform above. At this moment, a green-purple figure stood on the edge of the platform, looking at a scene of heroes gathering, and spread out without hesitation. Glowing film with scars. Dazzling bird, Su Yi blurted out. Wasn't the dazzling bird killed by the ferocious claw dragon? The corpses were all blown away. There was no time for Su Yi to think carefully. The dazzling bird screamed and flashed to warm up, and the Sakura fire dragon happened to look back. The vicious claws roared angrily and looked at the dazzling bird, while the terror Tyrannosaurus completely faced this way. Dazzling bird. Okay brothers, all eyes are on me. Look at me, look at me. I have an announcement. Base. A dazzling, intense flash of light burst out, like a second sun suddenly exploding in the sky. The Misty Claw was hit head-on by the flash, and even its underdeveloped eyes were stung by the glare. It subconsciously let its claws loosen the rock wall, and then lost its point of strength and fell to the ground. Su Yi immediately hugged Lu Sao and used his hook claws. He hooked onto the rock wall and hung on it, so that he was not crushed by the Misty Claw. The Sakura fire dragon fell dizzy from the sky, the fierce claw dragon shook its head in annoyance, and the terror Tyrannosaurus roared and took 2 steps back. Who is the real owner of Lu Coral Terrace? Tactical Fallback.jpg. When the dizzy bird is done, he brushes his clothes and goes away, hiding his merit and fame. That dizzy bird is the one from the beginning, right? Su Yi finally reacted after 10 seconds of overloaded brain. When he went to the dizzy bird's nest under the guidance of the coral, he found the footprints of the dizzy dragon. At that time, when they followed the sound to pursue the dizzy bird, the target guided by the guide insect was not the dizzy bird, but the dill claw dragon. He therefore mistakenly thought it was the dizzy bird that attacked the coral. In fact, the two are not the same one. There were obvious scars on the luminous film of the dazzling bird just now, which were injured by the hard stone that scratched the bird. This was the original dazzling bird. The poor-sighted Clawsaurus and the Clawsaurus were the first to recover. The Claws jumped onto the rock wall again and climbed up to the high platform. Su Yi used the hook to climb up, and Lu Cao held on tightly, behind him. Just when Su Yi climbed onto the edge of the platform, the vicious claw dragon roared and pounced from below. Ouch! The ferocious claw dragon roared angrily, its right claw lit up with a forest white light, and the lacerated claw swung with all its strength. When the ferocious claw dragon was about to bite Su Yi, it struck him down with one claw. Bang! The Tyrannosaurus fell heavily to the platform below. The still blind Tyrannosaurus twisted its body angrily. Its thick tail immediately hit the Tyrannosaurus, pushing it towards the edge of the platform and falling to the ground. Before it had time to get up, the ferocious claw dragon fell off the platform with most of its body. Howling, the fierce claws panicked and clawed at the ground. It would have been fine if it was a solid ground, but the edge of the platform was fragile coral. The fierce claws kept tearing the coral into pieces, turning it into pieces, leaving the fierce claws to pieces. The claws of the Cryptosaurus kept sliding. Finally, the sharp claws could no longer hold on, and the ferocious claw dragon roared and fell towards the miasma valley below. Phew, it's so exciting to have a party with a crowd. Su Yi wiped the sweat from his forehead and rested under a cave with Lu Kao and Misty Claw. While the Misty Claw was eating food to replenish its strength, Su Yi opened the hunting guide. Tasks. There are several investigation tasks added buzzingly, all related to the monsters just now. But the actual situation is that the ferocious claw dragon fell into the Valley of Miasma, and its life and death are unknown. The Tyrannosaurus Rex has no strength to challenge for the time being, and the Sakura fire dragon has the ability to fly. It is difficult for them to gain an advantage in the battle, and it is difficult to retain the opponent if they want to leave. Only dizzy birds. Mission: capture the dazzling bird. Mission support: none. Mission reward: 5 capture balls, 2 trap tools. Limited time: 3 days. This is a concise task. Although the dazzling bird is worth the price here at Goldfinger, to Su Yi, the dazzling bird still has unique value. Who wouldn't love a mobile flashbang? Are you right, Steel Dragon? Don't be in a hurry, take a rest, take a rest. Su Yi rested his head on the Misty Claw dragon and looked at the clear weather outside the cave. In the sky where pink coral eggs are scattered, there are occasionally 1 or 2 ancient manta rays that look like anomalocaridés floating leisurely. The sunny weather is perfect for sleeping in. Exhausted from the chase and the warm weather, Su Yi fell asleep slowly. Meow, Lu Kao yawned, nestled next to Su Yi, relaxed himself, and then gradually fell asleep. The Misty Claw looked at the man and the cat who were too relaxed, and watched helplessly. Well, how long have I slept? Su Yi said drowsily. You slept for 4 hours, Lotto. Rotom floated out of the phone and said. Also, if you don't charge me, I'm going to shut down Lotto. Rotom protested loudly. Su Yi scratched his head and said apologetically, ha ha ha, no wonder you are not so active. I forgot that you need to replenish the power. You should take care of yourself when taking risks, Lotto. But Rotom became concerned about Su Yi. It's okay, I'm just relaxing for a moment. Su Yi stretched and relaxed a lot mentally. Meow, the cat wiped its face with its furry paws. The Misty Claw stood up and moved its body. Thank you for helping us guard, Misty Claw Dragon. After Su Yi finished speaking, he walked outside the cave. At this moment, as the sun sets in the west, the mainland coral platform is shrouded in the red of the setting sun, and the coral eggs are like light snow under the rays of the setting sun. Let's go back to the Pokémon world first. Su Yi quickly charged his Rotom phone. It seems that the Pokémon world and Monster Hunter world are synchronized in time. When we come to the Pokémon world, the sky is also covered with sunset. At the Pokémon Center, Rotom's cell phone is charging at a public outlet. Su Yi and Lu Sao leaned on the edge, watching the trainers, Pokémon coming and going with interest. When I came here, I haven't been to the wilderness area outside Jiqing City. Let's go and play when you have time, Su Yi said, looking at the map of Galar on the wall next to him. Jingle bell, there's a call, Lotto. It's Dan Emperor. Rotom, who was charging at the side, floated over and said. Hello. Su Yi answered the phone. Hey, Su Yi, are you still in Gongmin City? Dan Emperor's tired voice came from the phone. I'm in Gongmin City, but your voice doesn't sound very good. Su Yi said in surprise. I've been busy recently. Dandy immediately changed the topic. Let's not talk about it for now. My brother Hepu's birthday is in 2 days. If you have nothing to do, you can go to Hualang town first. It also has unique scenery. I have told my family that you can stay at my house and they will treat you well. You don't have to be too restrained. This is what Dan Emperor mentioned before. I'll set off after I finish some things. Su Yi said. I'll see you then. After Dan Emperor finished speaking, he ended the call. Su Yi shook his head helplessly. Dan Emperor can be said to be one of the most dedicated champions, and he seems to have endless work to do at any time. Returning to Lu Coral platform again, it was already evening. Su Yi stood outside the cave, touched his chin and said, "What gift should I give to Hepu on his birthday?" At night, on the quiet soft coral platform, Su Yi discovered the footprints of the dizzy bird under the guidance of the guide insect. After memorizing the breath of the dizzy bird, the guide insect guided Su Yi to the higher rock stairs not far away. "Little dizzy bird, can you escape from my grasp?" Su Yi smiled confidently and climbed up the rock stairs with Lu Kao. After climbing up the vines for a while, a wide cave appeared in front of Su Yi. Inside the cave, there were countless shells piled up. The smooth shells reflected the moonlight and shone brightly in the dark night. Dazzling birds have the habit of collecting shiny objects. Firstly, they decorate their nests to gain the right to mate. Secondly, the smooth shells in this cave can reflect the flashing lights of the dazzling birds, making people caught off guard by the flash of light coming from an unknown angle, blind. Wow! The dizzy bird sensed the approach of the creature, walked out of the cave, looked at the visitor warily, and made a threatening sound from its mouth. Quick fight! Miserable claw dragon, enter! Su Yi decisively sent out the strongest combat force. Seeing this, dazzling bird unfolded the luminous film without hesitation, and the flash warm-up speed was much faster. "The same trick won't work on me twice." Su Yi chuckled. With that said, Su Yi took out the sunglasses prepared in his pocket, flicked them, opened the frames, and put them on neatly. Defense against flash. Base. The light instantly illuminated the cave. Reflected by the smooth shells, the dazzling light lit up frequently in the cave. The scene was like a dozen flash bombs being set off at once. Since it had no eyelids and could not close its eyes, the Mystylodon cleverly covered its eyes with its claws, blocking the flash of light that it gradually felt disgusted with. "Dragon Claw! Dragon Claw!" Su Yi shouted without being affected. The misty claw dragon jumped up, and the sharp claws formed by the green dragon energy flashed past. Wow! Dazzling bird's small body was instantly knocked to the ground. One more move, Iron Tail. The misty claw twists its body and swings its steely tail. This heavy blow immediately reduced the screams of the dizzy bird into a weak wail. "Catch the ball, go!" Su Yi threw the ball decisively. It seemed that he had accepted his fate, or that he did not dare to face the misty claw again. He captured the ball and stabilized it completely after struggling for a few times. Simple. Su Yi put away dazzling bird's capture ball. The investigation task about the dazzling bird and mission has been completed, the rewards have been collected, and the number of captured balls has reached 9. Well, in the game, you can collect pearls from the dazzling bird's nest. It likes shiny things so much, and it usually spends a long time patrolling its territory. There should be a lot of treasures there. Su Yi looked at the pile of caves. Circle of seashells. Come out and scratch the birds. Su Yi decisively released his digging skills. Unexpectedly, as soon as the scratching bird appeared, he smelled it carefully, then turned his head and explored a place in the cave. "Gah!" The tickle bird chirped excitedly, then quickly dug open the worthless shells. Seeing ticking bird's reaction, Su Yi was surprised and said, "It can't be." The scratching bird ran to the shell pile, waving its claws suitable for digging to quickly open the shells, and pecked with its beak from time to find out something. Then, its movements became cautious. "Is there any treasure, Lotto?" "Wow, there are so many pearls." Rotom floated out of the mobile phone and said in surprise. When the bird scratched the pile of shells, low-grade pearls of different sizes and not as good as the original bright pearls rolled out. But as a collector, Tishiao remained unmoved and continued to dig patiently. "Gah!" After a while, the bird screamed with joy, and then took out a pale purple egg from the pile of shells. "Sure enough, you are the only one who is most active in finding this thing," Su Yi said with a smile. The scratching bird trotted over and handed the dazzling bird egg to Su Yi. "Drink," Su Yi said in surprise. "Give it to me directly. You have a conscience." He thought that the scratching bird would pester him again to ask for and eat the egg. He was ready to bargain with the scratching bird, but he didn't know that it would be so proactive this time. "Gah!" When the bird saw Su Yi taking the egg, it screamed, as if to confirm that Su Yi had accepted it. Then, It immediately turned around, ran to the pile of shells, dug out another egg, and then protected the egg with all its might under Su Yi's shocked eyes. Su Yi, you little clever guy. Seeing the stubborn expression on the bird's face, Su Yi said in a dumbfounded voice, okay. I just want one. I'll give you this one to try. After all, this was Su Yi's promise to take the bird to eat eggs it had never eaten before. Gah! The bird happily ran over and handed the egg to Su Yi, as if to say, in this case, you can help me make egg dishes. Su Yi, all I can say is that I have a conscience, but not much. Su Yi asked Rotom on his mobile phone to turn on the flashlight and shine the flashlight on the egg. He found that the inside of the egg was in the state of egg liquid and no embryo had formed. So he put an egg into the accompanying beast in the hunting guide and let it hatch naturally. Put another one into item and use it as cooking ingredients. Since there are eggs, that means, Su Yi checked the accompanying beast page. Name, dazzling bird. Race, dazzling bird, male. Attribute, dragon, normal. Characteristics, platform walker. If the physical strength is above half when appearing, the speed will be increased by 2 levels, and the priority of changing moves will be +1. Moves, dazzling flash, exclusive move. General attributes, changing moves. After a short warm-up, releases a strong flash that briefly stuns the target in front of you and makes it blind for a period of time. Bite, acrobatics, crazy grabbing, bluffing, rapidity return. Is it possible that the dizzy bird that was killed by the ferocious claw dragon was its mate? Su Yi sighed, but this is the nature of the law of the jungle, so there is no need to be too merciful. However, the characteristics and moves of the dazzling bird made Su Yi feel bright. He thought it was a functional accompanying beast, but he didn't expect it to be unexpectedly interesting. The first is the characteristic of the platform walker, which allows dazzling bird to attack first in most situations. After that, after increasing its speed by 2 levels and changing the move priority +1, it can be the first to use the dazzling flash to stun and blind the opponent. Finally, use rapid retracement to switch to the highly offensive accompanying beast to kill the unresisting target. An efficient control and killing routine. Yes, with this characteristic and this set of moves, it's worthy of Lu Coral Terrace. Su Yi said in surprise. Su Yi released the dizzy bird and checked its status. He saw that the dizzy bird was covered in scars and looked very depressed. It felt like it didn't resist fiercely in the battle just now. It is estimated that it was the last time it stunned the 4 monsters of ripples. Su Yi sighed, patted dazzling bird on the back, and said, leave this sad place, referring to the nest, and come with me to harm other flying dragons. Wow, the dizzy bird is not that sad in the first place. After all, in nature, most monsters are like husband and wife or birds of the same forest, and they fly separately when disaster strikes. After a while, you may not think so much about it, but after getting the treasure, after Kamuo regained his intelligence, his emotions and wisdom were sublimated, but he felt even more sad. Give you a name. I'll call you Zaiba from now on. Su Yi said. The scientific name of the dizzy bird is pronounced Cici Yauku, and the name, Si Kwang, is also quite cute. After packing up the pearls in the lair, Su Yi left here. Returning to the narrow temporary camp, Su Yi packed up the camping group and prepared to go to the new camp. The new camp is naturally the paradise in front of the Mesa performing tribe. There are not only waterfalls and flowing water there, but also swimming fish in the pools that can be used as food. The coral rocks in the water curtain cave are also rich in insect material resources. Not only that, there are also pearl oysters living in the water, and some rock walls have some exposed mineral veins can be seen. Not only is the scenery beautiful, land-based monsters cannot enter at all, and monsters that can fly will also be blocked by the platform above the cave. Even if they fly below the platform and discover this location, they will not be able to enter through the narrow passage. In short, this is a safe, beautiful, and resource-rich place. If it weren't for the lack of sunshine there, Su Yi would even want to be in that kind of field. Moreover, there are also platform musicians taking care of them, so it's nice to be able to pet the bobcats from time to time. It was late at night, and Su Yi rode the miserable clawed dragon to the water curtain cave camp under the stars and the moon. Lu Coral Platform is really a good place for a night tour. The quiet atmosphere and the surrounding luminous creatures light up the way, making people intoxicated. Hey! The Misty Claw suddenly stopped and sniffed the surrounding smell. What's wrong? The moment Su Yi was confused, the guide insect from his waist flew out, illuminated and attached to a mark. A mark that looked like it had been cut by a knife appeared on the coral rock, and there were some indescribable footprints around it. This mark, Su Yi touched his chin with a subtle expression. Is it nearby? Su Yi asked the miserable claw dragon. The Misty Claw snorted and shook his head, indicating that the smell was very weak. Then keep going, Su Yi said. When Su Yi squeezed through the rock gap, walked on the cliff plank road whistling in the night breeze, and returned to the water curtain cave, Coral and several cats from the platform performer tribe were sitting on the coral, waiting with lanterns that glowed with light bugs. With Coral meow. We're back, meow. Lu Kao greeted happily waving her paws. It's Su Yi and Lu Sao meow. You're back safely, meow. Coral trotted over and said happily. The dazzling bird has been subdued by me, and the ferocious claws has also fallen into the Miasma Valley. I don't know whether it is alive or dead at the moment, but you still have to be careful. There is a dino Tyrannosaurus on the platform, which is a big dark green loofah. Su Yi said to the coral. Describe. Thank you so much, meow. We must treat you to a big meal this time, meow. Coral said with a serious expression. Chapter 71. After Su Yi placed the camping group on a small platform next to the waterfall pool, Su Yi and his party, Huan Hualong and the others walked through the waterfall and returned to the tribe of the platform musicians. At this time, the cats were cooking food in full swing. Seeing Su Yi's arrival, the cats blew the French horns, clapped the bongo drums, and played cheerful music. The simple and kind-hearted cats thanked Su Yi for his help with passionate performances. In their opinion, Su Yi not only helped them solve the problem of dizzy birds, but also drove away the ferocious direclaws. He also provided medicine and food when they were in trouble. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the savior of the tribe. Su Yi, meow, let us cook for you this time, meow. Coral said, and the cat behind him set up a grill or something, and began to make the highest standard of their tribe's cuisine. Su Yi did not refuse the kindness of the platform performers, but while enjoying their unique and passionate music, he curiously watched the cats cooking food. The cats work together and prepare the food in an orderly manner. The dried shellfish made from sun-dried shellfish is cut into cubes and put into a pot with coral shrimp and sashimi to make seafood soup. Take the wing base of the Fangpterosaurus and grill it on the grill, cut a few slits, and then apply golden brown secret honey to grill it for flavor. The marinated salted fish is simply baked and sprinkled with the unique spices of the land coral terraces. Cut out the pulp of fresh fruits of various colors to make colorful fruit plates. There's even pearl juice made from pickled coral eggs. It was really an eye-opener for Su Yi. They were worthy of being a tribe that had lived in this place for an unknown amount of time. They had explored everything here and then made full use of it. The food is served, meow. Coral shouted happily. The cute lynxes each carried plates of steaming food and placed them on the stone table in front of Su Yi. Su Yi enjoyed a cat meal, in the true sense. All start. Start it, meow. One sip of the fragrant seafood soup will drive away fatigue, and the aroma of seafood in your mouth will leave you with endless aftertaste. Su Yi took a large piece of roasted Fangpterosaurus wing root, and when he held it in front of him, he could smell the aroma of barbecue and the sweetness of honey. Both the color and smell were provoking the salivary glands. Well, when you take one bite, you will be filled with chewy but extremely tender meat. Honey juice and meat are wrapped together, and the sweet aroma makes people want to stop. Take a sip of pearl juice, then pick up a piece of grilled salted fish and taste the salty and tender fish meat. Let's eat together, Coral. Su Yi said. Meow. Seeing Su Yi enjoying their food so much, the cats meowed happily and called the tribesmen to join the banquet. It was late at night, and lights were lit in the tribe of platform performers, and the stone table was in a mess. Su Yi took the last bite of the tender and delicious fruit and burped. Why don't I have the physique of a hunter? Otherwise I can eat more. Su Yi touched his belly and sighed. Meow. Lu Kao leaned against the stone table, licking her paws happily. Are you satisfied, meow? Coral asked. Su Yi smiled and said, I couldn't be more satisfied. Coral, can I learn your cooking? Coral nodded and said, no problem, meow. Su Yi did not return to the camp tonight, but slept on the terrace with the cats. This kind of sincere communication that didn't require too much thinking made Suyi very comfortable. Although there are not all kinds of convenient electrical appliances and there are not all kinds of rich entertainment activities here, you can still feel the pulse of survival. The feeling of using everything you can find to survive optimistically and fully. The next day, when Suyi left, the cats brought big and small bags of ingredients and stuffed them for Suyi, just like when you go home during the New Year and your grandma thinks you are hungry and stuffs you a lot of food. Suyi gave some medicines and props as gifts in return, and then left the world of monster hunting. Guest, do you need help to move it up? The uncle from the steel-armored crow flight rental asked with concern when he saw Suyi carrying large and small bags. Suyi put the things into the carriage with a bang and said with a smile, "No, the destination is Hualang Town, thank you." As the hometown of Dan Emperor, Hualang Town is still experiencing the lingering atmosphere of the challenge in the gym. Various posters of Dan Emperor can be seen everywhere on the streets of the town, and people are still discussing Dan Emperor's exciting showdown. Walking into the countryside, you can see many pastures raising Pokémon such as braided sheep and Kentaro, greedy chinchillas jumping on the treetops, and groups of chickadees occasionally flying in the sky. People and Pokémon live together harmoniously and peacefully here, full of pastoral atmosphere. Entering a large courtyard and standing in front of a double-story building, Suyi knocked on the door. "Is it the eldest brother?" An expectant shout came from behind the door. The door swung open, revealing an energetic young man with slightly darker skin. "Ah, it's not the eldest brother. That's right, he usually gets lost," the young man said to himself when he saw the eldest brother who was not him. "Hello, Heppu, I am a friend of Emperor Dan. I was invited to his home and also attended your birthday," Suyi said politely. "Meow," cat waved its paw. "Big brother's friend?" Hep asked curiously. "Hep, don't leave the guests outside the door." Hep's mother's voice came from inside the house. "Oh, sorry, please come in." Heppu smiled and led Suyi into the house. "Dandy told me, you are Suyi, you are welcome to come to our house to play." Heppu's mother brought out drinks and fruits to entertain Suyi. "Thank you, these are some gifts from me. When Emperor Dan comes back, please let me cook a meal for everyone." Suyi handed over the ingredients he picked out. Mother Hep looked at the big bag of things in surprise and said, "You are too polite to bring so many things." Suyi smiled and said, "It's nothing. Emperor Dan also helped me a lot. These things are not worth mentioning." As he spoke, Suyi took out the fruits with New World characteristics and put them on the fruit plate. "How is my eldest brother doing now? Why hasn't he come back yet?" Heppu asked Suyi. Suyi said, "Your eldest brother is very busy, but he is also a very responsible champion." Hep said proudly, "That's right. That's my big brother. By the way, how did you and my eldest brother know each other?" Heppu was very interested in the affairs of his eldest brother Dan Emperor. "I met Dan Emperor on Kai Island more than a month ago. I fought with him once, and we are no longer acquainted. After that, he helped me a lot," Suyi said. Hop was surprised. You can actually fight against my big brother. You are also a trainer, right? Let me see what Pokemon you have, okay." Seeing Heppu's interest, Suyi did not refuse. On a small battlefield in the small courtyard, Suyi released several Pokemon and accompanying beasts. Burning Bug, Auspicious Egg, Bear Apprentice, Little Poisonous Demon Bird. As for the accompanying beasts that have not been released, that will be a surprise show later. There are a lot of Pokemon I haven't seen before. I know Gilly Egg, but where are the remaining ones? Hep squatted down and looked at the Pokemon in front of him with curiosity and excitement. This is a burning bug. Its characteristic is a body of flame. You can hold it in your arms to warm your hands on cold nights, and it feels furry. Suyi touched the furry body of the burning bug. Gee, the burning insect squinted its eyes, enjoying the touch. "Can I touch it?" Hearing, furry, Hep's eyes lit up and he immediately thought of the fuzzy wool of braided sheep. "Of course." Suyi smiled and nodded. Hop cautiously stretched out his hand. Seeing this, the burning bug moved towards Hop, feeling the kindness of the burning bug. Hop boldly touched it, and the furry fur had a warm feeling. "Thank you, burning bug, it's really a great feeling." Feeling the warmth of life, Hep said excitedly. "This is Disciple Shang. He is a warrior, and he also has the mind of a warrior. He is a brave little guy. Su Yi said. Disciple Shang stepped into a horse stance and punched twice, full of momentum. This is the poisonous demon bird. He is still a child. He likes to eat nuts. Now he always likes to act like a spoiled child. Su Yi looked at the poisonous demon bird that had grown to the size of a large dog. Many animals grow at a rapid rate within a period of time after they are born. Soon. Wow, the little poisonous demon bird suddenly jumped into Su Yi's arms, rubbed its head in his arms, and made a coquettish sound. Ha, the little guy is already so heavy. That moment made Su Yi stumble and almost lost his balance. What about this cat Pokemon wearing clothes? Hup looked at the cute Lu Cow. My name is Lu Sao Meow, and I am in a Lu Sao Meow. Lu Sao introduced herself, waving her paws. Hup was stunned. A talking Pokemon. Su Yi smiled and said, "This is my Aibo, my first adventure partner." Hup sighed with longing in his eyes. It's great. I can go on adventures in various places and see so many Pokemon. I really want to travel. There will be such a day. Su Yi said with a smile. After that, Su Yi patiently introduced these Pokemon and accompanying beasts, such as their attributes, characteristics, and habits. It's amazing, Brother Su Yi, you know so much about these Pokemon. Hep said with admiration. I'm just standing on the shoulders of those who came before me, and I'm just trying to pick up people's wisdom. Su Yi said modestly. And this is also true. For example, he basically learned about the ecology of monsters through videos on the internet. The characteristics of Pokemon were also learned from a god's perspective through animation or games. In reality, these research results may require long-term research, or even years of observation and verification before the results can be obtained. Brother Su Yi, can you fight with me? I also want to be a powerful trainer like Big Brother. Although I'm not old enough to travel yet, I really like Pokemon and Pokemon battles. You have fought against my eldest brother, so you must have good strength. Can you let me see it? Please, Hepu requested with expectation. Hepu, who has longed for alchemy, has been interested in Pokemon and battles since he was a child. Now that there is a trainer in front of him who can fight with his big brother, he wants to try the feeling of fighting with an official trainer no matter what. Seeing the pure and passionate expectation in Hepu's eyes, Su Yi readily agreed. Okay, come down quickly, braided sheep, Hep shouted to the upstairs. Hey, soon, a fluffy and round white lamb ran down the stairs, rushed out of the door and ran to Hup. Appeared, the braided sheep Jinchuriki. In the game, except for braided sheep and a Gosangia given by Dandy, all other Pokemon in Hep's team have changed. The Pokemon braided sheep is not very strong in terms of statistics, and can even be said to be weak. However, Hup has always brought it to the finals. He does not forget his original intention, and he is such a Pokemon. A true portrayal of a boy who truly loves Pokemon. Hep petted the braided sheep lovingly and said excitedly, "Braided sheep, let's have our first official battle with a trainer in our lives." Hey, the braided sheep was filled with fighting spirit and energy. Then, let me send out the poisonous demon bird here for the first battle, little guy. Su Yi thought for a while and sent out the little poisonous demon bird. Wow, the little poisonous demon bird looked at Su Yi in confusion. Su Yi lowered his body, touched the poisonous demon bird's head, and said, "Next, follow my command and use the moves. Trust me, okay." Feeling Su Yi's touch and trust, the little poisonous demon bird chirped sweetly. Hup, you should know the rules of the battle. Hepu clasped his fists and said eagerly, "Of course. Okay, the 1v1 battle between Hepu and Su Yi begins now." Su Yi announced with a smile. Hep clenched his fist and shouted quickly, "Up! Braided sheep, strike first." Crash. Hey, the braided sheep heard the order and stepped forward with its short legs and bumped its head against it. Su Yi waved his hand and said, "Use your wings to attack to block it." The little poisonous demon bird had a serious look in its eyes, and a pair of wings that could not yet fly lit up with white light, and waved at the braided sheep that was charging towards it. Bang! The impact of the braided sheep was stopped by the wings. Poison smoke. Wow! The little poisonous demon bird raised its tail and pointed the end at the braided sheep. "No, braided sheep, get out of the way!" Hep shouted anxiously. "Continue to use your wings to attack and hold it," Su Yi ordered. The little poisonous demon bird used its wings to attack the braided sheep, and the opening at the end of its tail puffed out purple poisonous smoke, instantly covering the braided sheep. Hey, cough. The braided sheep was choked in the poisonous smoke and coughed repeatedly. Braided sheep, are you okay? Hep couldn't see the situation in the smoke and shouted in panic. Hey, the braided sheep in the poisonous smoke heard Hepu's panic shouting, and also panicked. Su Yi said, Hep, in the battle, don't panic no matter what. If you panic, the Pokémon who believe in you will also panic. After hearing this, Hep slapped his cheek gently, and the panic in his eyes subsided slightly. Listening to the sound, the braided sheep should not have been seriously injured, then. The braided sheep rushed out. Hey, hearing Hepu's calm command voice, the braided sheep immediately curled up its round body and quickly rolled out the poisonous smoke. Braided sheep, is this poisoned? Hep noticed the slightly purple expression on braided sheep's face. Hey, the braided sheep cried out uncomfortably, and then shouted firmly. Then use that move. Get up quickly, Hep said with a fist. The braided sheep curled up and rolled up again. Although it didn't learn the rolling trick, it still had the flavor of the trick. Wow, the little poisonous demon bird stared at the braided sheep, but the braided sheep did not attack it immediately, but rolled around it faster and faster. Hep smiled and commanded loudly, this is a fighting move I learned from my brother's video and created on my own. The braided sheep just jumps up and attacks from above. The rolling braided sheep suddenly jumped up, and the rolling white fur was like a spinning basketball, hitting the little poisonous demon bird from a high place. Su Yi chuckled and said, that's good. You've learned to create your own moves at a young age. Is this a low-end version of high-speed rotation? Poison monster bird, try to avoid it. The little poisonous demon bird spread its short legs and hid to the side. Follow me. The braided sheep landed on the ground and missed, but it used its high-speed rotation to catch up and immediately hit the little poisonous demon bird. Wow, the little poisonous demon bird was hit hard, screamed in pain, and fell to the side. Use beating, Su Yi shouted. The little poisonous demon bird that fell to the ground opened its mouth and flicked out its long and flexible tongue, hitting the braided sheep that had stopped because it hit an object. Hey, the braided sheep cried out in pain, and the poisoning stayed on its body broke out again. What are you doing? Came a shout. Dan Emperor, and Sonia. Su Yi turned around and saw Sonia leading Dan Emperor into the courtyard and shouting to Su Yi. Brother, Hep shouted excitedly. We are fighting. Su Yi said in a daze. Unexpectedly, Sonia said angrily, this child is only a few days old, how can we let it fight so quickly? Sonia walked up to the little poisonous bird, stroked it, and checked its injuries. The little poisonous bird still remembered the big sister who chose food for it, and responded to the touch with a happy cry. Fortunately, there is no problem, but this is too messy. Su Yi scratched his head and said, this. Not bad, now we can fight. Seeing Hepu's happy look, Emperor Dan was also very happy. Su Yi took out the antidote, gave it to the braided sheep, and then gave it some recovery medicine. The braided sheep was not seriously injured and quickly regained its vitality. Su Yi, how are you, my brother Hepu? Emperor Dan smiled. Su Yi nodded and said, he is a young man who loves Pokémon, and he is also very motivated. Emperor Dan nodded. I just get a little impulsive sometimes. It was almost dinner time. Su Yi put on an apron, and Lu Sao followed him, gearing up. Su Yi, let us come and let the guests cook or something, Dandy said, scratching his head. Su Yi smiled and said, this is a gift I carefully prepared. To celebrate Hepu's birthday, and to thank you and Sonia for helping me, I must let you taste the food from there today. Then we'll look forward to it. Dan Emperor nodded with a smile. Is it actually brother Su Yi who is cooking? Hepu looked at it curiously. Then let's begin. Su Yi's eyes became serious. He took out the ingredients in the bag one by one, and then processed them with a skillful technique. Mao Mao did the same. Dandy, this friend of yours has a very high level of cooking. The mother who was in charge of cooking at home said in surprise. Can a trainer actually have such a level of cooking? It was a mess when Emperor Dan was cooking. According to him, these are necessary skills for adventure, although I don't know who stipulated this. Dan Emperor smiled. Su Yi and Lu Sao cooperated with each other and quickly put the prepared ingredients into the pot. There are so many ingredients that I have never seen before, and they are so fragrant. Hepu exclaimed after swallowing his saliva as he smelled the aroma gradually emanating from the pot. Ever since I had that meal on Kai Island, I started to feel hungry when I smelled this fragrance. Dandy said intoxicatedly. After eating Su Yi's food that time, he felt exhausted after the busy work. They were all healed instantly, making him miss it every time he was extremely tired. It smells very good, and after hearing what you said, I'm looking forward to it. Sonia said. Hup, I'm coming. Outside the door, there was a knock on the door. Oh, it's Xiao Yu here. Hep went to open the door excitedly, and saw a brown-haired girl wearing a Scottish round hat smiling and saying hello to Hep outside the door. Hep, I wish you a happy birthday. Xiao Yu handed out a gift. Hepu took it with a smile, and then introduced to Xiao Yu. This is my eldest brother Dandy, who you are already familiar with. This is Sonia, and this is Su Yi. His Pokémon are very cute and the food is great. Xiao Yu smiled and greeted several people politely. Su Yi turned around and saw the protagonist of Sword and Shield. Xiao Yu, so cute. Xiao Yu habitually smoothed the bangs on his forehead and said politely, hello. Please wait a moment, the food will be ready soon. Su Yi nodded and turned back to continue cooking. Xiao Yu looked at this man curiously. He was wearing strange clothes. He said they were clothes, but they looked more like equipment. And isn't Hep's mother usually the one who prepares dinner? Why is he such a strange person today, but the fragrance coming from there is really delicious. Serve. Su Yi quickly finished the last dish. It's served. Meow. Mao Mao smiled and brought the food up. A talking Pokémon. Xiao Yu looked at the cute cat in surprise. That was Su Yi's first partner, and they went on adventures together. It's exciting to think about adventures. Hep said with a smile. With the help of everyone, more than a dozen dishes were brought to the table, with a variety of fried and stewed dishes, and even fruit plates and drinks. It's too rich, Dan Emperor said in surprise. Hepu said gratefully, thank you, brother Su Yi, for preparing so many dishes. Xiao Yu swallowed unconsciously as he looked at the large table of dishes that were full of color, flavor and food that fully aroused greed. This is a drink I just learned. First of all, I wish Hepu a happy birthday. Secondly, I would like to thank Sonia and Dandy for their help. Cheers. Su Yi raised the pearl juice and said with a smile. You're so welcome. Cheers. Emperor Dan smiled and raised his drink as well. Cheers. Everyone raised their glasses together. Then, there was a feast. The fried and tender large pieces of herbivorous dragon meat are doused with honey juice given by the platform performers. Not only does it look appetizing, but it is also satisfying to put it in your mouth and chew it. After the sashimi is simply steamed, the fish meat is sweet and original, and the specialty mushrooms from the ancient forest are paired with a simple sauce. The deliciousness is full of the fragrance of nature. Tender barnacle abalone, tender pearl oyster meat, crispy fried coral shrimp. The sago-like soaked coral eggs were put into the juice and served with a variety of delicious and juicy fruits from the New World. Everyone enjoyed the meal. It's so delicious, but it's a pity that I can't eat it anymore. Hep patted his belly and said happily. It is indeed a rare delicacy, but I can't help but eat too much, which is not very friendly to me who wants to stay in shape. Sonia said with happiness and distress. Xiao Yu sipped the novel and delicious drink and nodded in agreement. Hepu, I wish you a happy birthday. You are one step closer to going out on adventure. Dandy gave him his gift. Thank you, brother. Hep happily took the gift and called immediately. Inside was a handsome peaked cap. Su Yi looked at it for a moment. In the game, there were a lot of hats in Dan Emperor's room. It is probably in his room now. I said before that Dan Emperor also has a hat type. This brother gave hats to him on his birthday. I can only say that is expected of you. Hep, this is my gift. I believe you will take good care of it. I also hope that you will never forget your original intention so that you can always succeed. Su Yi handed over the dazzling bird eggs that had been prepared long ago. Wow, it's a Pokémon egg. Hup's eyes widened and he exclaimed loudly. What is this? Sonia looked at the lavender egg, and then at Su Yi. Su Yi nodded and said, yes, that's the Pokémon over there. Sonia understood. They were the eggs of those rare Pokémon that had not yet been registered in the Alliance Pokédex. Take good care of it, Hep, this is a very rare Pokémon egg. Sonia couldn't help but warned. Yes, I will definitely do it. When I can travel alone, I will take it with me on adventures. Hep nodded seriously, and then said full of longing and expectation. What? The braided sheep climbed onto Hep's lap and looked at the egg curiously. Emperor Dan said gratefully. Suyi, I didn't expect you to give such a precious thing. Thank you. Thank you so much for your gift, Brother Suyi. I like it very much. Hepu said sincerely. As long as you treat it well, it will not let you down and become a strong partner. Suyi said, and he was indeed relieved to entrust the dazzling bird egg to Hepu. Well, now that you've eaten and drank enough. Suyi looked at Dan Emperor. Dandy stood up with a smile and said, your cooking is so amazing. All the fatigue has been dispelled, and you are even full of energy and motivation. Especially when I think about fighting you, I'm really looking forward to your new partners and tactics. Brother is going to fight Brother Suyi. Hepu said in surprise. That's right, this is the battle show we prepared for you. Dandy smiled and gave a thumbs up. I'm ready to make a move, let you see my new partner. Suyi stood up and moved his hands and feet. Okay, Hep danced happily. There was also a look of anticipation in Xiaoyu's eyes. The Battle of Champions, and watching it so close, was something that many people in the Galar region dreamed of. Soon, everyone walked out of the courtyard and, under the guidance of Emperor Dan, came to a vast wilderness. This place, Sonia sighed. This was the place where she and Dandy often fought after they went out on adventures together. Emperor Dan breathed the breeze of the wilderness with satisfaction. The setting sun gradually rose in the sky, and the afterglow of the sun shone on him, casting a long shadow. Then let me be the referee, Sonia said, taking Lu Sao, Xiaoyu and Hepu to the side, and gave up the field to Suyi and Dandy. Finally, our second duel. Emperor Dan held his hat and said. Suyi clenched his fists and said with a grin, a battle that is as exciting as adventure, I have been looking forward to this day. Then, the 4v4 battle between Dan Emperor and Suyi begins now. Sonia said with a solemn expression. Come out, ×2. Suyi and Dandy sent out Pokémon at the same time. Kuru, a Pokémon wearing a dress, a top hat, and holding an icicle cane appeared on the field. Suyi's first choice was the ferocious jackal dragon. As soon as it appeared, it let out a fighting and impatient roar. Just because the undulating terrain of the Lu Coral Terrace required frequent climbing and jumping, Suyi couldn't let the big ferocious jackal dragon appear. Therefore, the big ferocious jackal dragon couldn't stay any longer and was eager to do some activities. Bingjia Super Ice Walking Doll. This is targeting my weakness. Suyi frowned. Kulu, the ice-stepping doll, stood in the wilderness and danced tap dance with its feet that resembled big leather shoes. With the waving gentleman's ice stick, it looked like a tap dancer or comedian. That big guy, is it also Suyi's Pokémon? Hepu was shocked. He originally thought that Suyi's Pokémon were cute little things like burning bugs, gilly eggs, and dew grass. Who knew that this one would turn out to be a Pokémon when it was released? A huge and vicious lizard. Xiaoyu tilted his head, remembering Hepu's introduction to Suyi before, and looked at Hepu with confusion in his eyes, as if to say, you call this cute? Suyi, after understanding the attributes of your Pokémon, I won't do it without a plan. Dandy smiled and shouted, Ice Walking Doll. Hail. Ku, the ice walking puppet raised its ice staff and pointed to the sky. Suddenly, hail began to fall in the clear sky, and hailstones fell from the sky. The ferocious jackal dragon felt the sudden drop in temperature and twisted its body irritably. The fierce jackal dragon, roar loudly. Suyi shouted. Enduring the blow of the hail, the ferocious jackal dragon opened its mouth and roared fiercely. The black-purple evil energy shock wave rushed towards the ice-walking doll, but the ice-walking doll rotated the icicles in its hands at high speed to form a high-speed rotating ice pillar shield to withstand the impact of loud roars. Kulu, the ice-treading doll, took a few steps back, took off the impact, and danced like a normal person again. It's really difficult. Roar. The big ferocious jackal roared irritably in the hail. This is a bad start. Suyi frowned. Come on, brother. Come on, brother Suyi. Hepu shouted from the side. Come on, meow. Lu Kao shouted, waving her paws. What's wrong? Are you at your wits' end? What are you going to do next? Ice walking doll. Use freeze drying to turn this area into your home court. Dan Emperor shouted with a smile. Hulu. The ice stepping doll stood on tiptoes and spun around like a dancer. At the same time, the icy cold air spread to the surroundings as it rotated, freezing it all the way. Get out of the way, the ferocious jackal. Su Yi shouted. The big ferocious jackal dragon retreated rapidly, and now the area within 10 meters around the ice stepping doll turned into an ice rink. It was skating gracefully on the ice, waiting for the big ferocious jackal dragon to attack. Phew, this is a blow to me. I can't help but return the favor. The ferocious jackal dragon. Use all your strength to press mount high against that annoying venue. Su Yi shouted. Roar. The big ferocious jackal dragon raised its body, its belly shrouded in white light, and then it roared and smashed down hard. Boom. Wow. The frozen field was smashed instantly, and the cracks spread rapidly. In an instant, the entire frozen field fell apart. Kuru, the ice-walking doll, who had been skating leisurely just now, fell from the broken ice in panic. Although the ice element restrains the dragon element, the super element is also restrained by the evil element. The ferocious jackal dragon. Charge up and use bite. Su Yi took advantage of the gap where the ice-stepping doll fell in panic and gave the order again. Ouch! The big ferocious jackal dragon crawls on its thick limbs and rushes in like a tank. You actually cracked my sight like this. Emperor Dan was not surprised. Looking at the ferocious jackal dragon charging towards him, he calmly ordered, Ice-stepping doll, shake and dance. Ku. Facing the ferocious jackal dragon that was about to rush forward, the ice-stepping doll listened to the conductor and swayed leisurely, dancing a dizzying dance. Ah! Su Yi was startled, and then recalled that this move would put the Pokémon into chaos. This ice-stepping doll, in addition to restraining the dragon-type freeze-drying, also has the weather move Hail. Not only that, but also the rocking dance that inflicts abnormal status. He didn't dare to think about the remaining moves. He was so talented. And is it targeted? The big ferocious jackal dragon that was staring at the ice-stepping doll was completely facing it. There was no chance of dodging this move. Sure enough, when he saw the swaying figure, a strange power invaded the mind of the ferocious jackal. It tripped over at a loss and then attacked indiscriminately. But the ice-stepping doll returned to its leisurely state and continued to tap dance on its own. The Pokémon's excellent qualities, coupled with the champion's cool-headedness and excellent commanding abilities, made the great ferocious jackal lose all its advantages at once. As expected of a champion. With the hail weather on his head, he fell into a state of chaos. The opponent was still restrained by the ice element. Su Yi was completely at a disadvantage. Come on, meow, Lu Kao shouted in support. Come back, big ferocious jackal dragon, take a good rest. Su Yi took back the big ferocious jackal dragon and planned to send out another accompanying beast. Come back. The ice-treading doll performed well. Unexpectedly, Dan Emperor also replaced the ice-treading doll. You're next. ×2. Both sides once again sent out new Pokémon. Takaga, a familiar figure, stood on the field. It was the 3 pure water royal families of Galar, Thousand Faces Avoidance, who was as elegant as an agent. Ga. Su Yi sent someone to scratch the bird. We meet again, Thousand Faces Avoidance. Su Yi said with a smile. Taha. Chinmian Yuyang nodded, with a confident smile on his lips. This Pokémon of yours has used Rock-type and Flying-type moves. If the attributes are normal, you should have one of them. Dandy grinned. He had also watched the whole battle between Tickerbird and Centipede King. Some information was collected. Su Yi. If you have a flying type, Thousand Faces evasion can be restrained with freezing light. If you have a rock type, you can directly use this type of sniper to restrain it. You will understand. I just don't know if Emperor Dan knows that Ticklebird has the dragon type. The damage of water type moves is halved, while the ice type has 4 times the restraint. If he tries it out, he will be targeted again. Wow, Ticklebird shook his body, feeling seriously uncomfortable with the hail weather. Thousand Faces Avoidance, use sniper to say hello first. Dan Emperor shouted. Click. Chinmian Yiyang fired a gun with one hand, and a powerful water ray burst out. While avoiding, try to get closer at the same time. Su Yi shouted. The bird stretched out its long legs, dodged left and right under the attack of the water flow, and ran nimbly. Then use freezing light to block the road. Emperor Dan decisively changed his tactics. Thousand Faces Escaper waved his hand, and at the same time, the freezing light from his fingertips swept across, drawing an arc of frozen ground in front of the approaching bird, blocking its progress. Solid blow. Tickling Bird quickly gathered an energy rock, then jumped high, jumped over the frozen ground, and attacked Thousand Faces Escape head-on. Crush it, Emperor Dan quickly commanded. Click. Chinmian Yuanyu quickly aimed at the energy rock and fired with a sniper. The piercing water gun instantly shattered the energy rock. He screamed and landed empty-handed next to Chinmian Yuanyu. Double gun mode. Thousand Faces Dodger pointed with his other hand, and the water stream shot out like a sniper rifle bullet. Su Yi punched hard and said, "Resist." Then hit hard with a hard stone taken from the local area. Gah! The bird ignored the sniper and quickly dug up the ground, and a rock condensed out. At the same time, grass-type energy surged out of the grass and merged into the rock, turning it green. Bah! The sniper shot hit the scratching bird, who screamed in surprise, leaving a long and narrow but shallow scar on his body. It didn't look like he had been hit hard at all. The effect is not good. It's not a rock type. Is it an attribute that resists the water type? Dan Emperor was surprised. Strike with a solid rock. Su Yi shouted. Gah! With such a close blow, Chinmian Yiyu couldn't avoid it. The solid stone with grass energy hit Chinmian Yiyu's slender body hard, and Chinmian Yiyu screamed in pain, was beaten backwards. The move called Solid Blow changes its attributes. Is it made from local materials? Is it a characteristic? Is it a move like the force of nature that changes the moves or move attributes according to the terrain or field conditions? Dan Emperor's mind was racing. Think and come up with the correct answer. What happened? Looking at the changes in the scene, Hep asked in confusion. Naturally, Sonia told them the situation and came to the same conclusion as Dandy had guessed. It's so amazing, the moves can change. Hep said curiously. Seeing that the situation has changed again, Xiaoyu can't help but get involved in the ever-changing battle. Well done, Su Yi encouraged. The characteristic of tickling birds, which is extremely dependent on the venue, finally has its use today. It is really difficult to find opportunities to use this characteristic, because it must match the attributes of the venue to restrain the opponent in order to achieve the desired effect. The conditions are a bit harsh. It's a good offensive strategy, but this makes me confirm one thing. This Pokémon named Tickle Bird should not have the rock type. So, what about the flying type? Thousand Faces Evasion. Freezing Ray. Dan Emperor not at all disappointed, but confident that he had explored the opponent's weaknesses step by step. Click. Thousand Faces Refuge fired freezing rays. Tickle Bird could only dodge and was driven away from Thousand Faces Refuge, giving it a shooting space. Su Yi could only lament that he was worthy of being the champion. When the attributes of his opponent's Pokémon were completely unknown, he guessed and tested them out, thus regaining the advantage again. Tickling the bird. Use local materials again, hold the rock in your arms, and find an opportunity to rush over. Su Yi could only try this way. Gah! Tick Bird quickly picked up the rock with grass attribute energy and sprinted quickly. Qian Mian takes refuge, turn back quickly. Emperor Dan commanded calmly. Thousand-faced Evader jumped lightly, and the insect type's rapid return instantly shattered the hard stone with grass type energy, and then quickly returned to the ball. With a bang, the ice-walking doll appeared again, and just as it was being hit, breaking the rock in front of the scratching bird. Freeze drying. Dandy waved and shouted, "Oops, get out of the way." Su Yi shouted anxiously. Hulu. The ice-stepping doll waved its ice staff, and the extremely cold air instantly hit the bird that was so close. There was no way to avoid it at this distance. The most effective attack hit the bird, which screamed and retreated. Its body was instantly covered with frost, and it was panting violently. In the sky, the hail has stopped, revealing the sky under the sunset. The bird's body was shivering from the cold, and there were signs of frostbite. Tickling the bird, can we still fight? Su Yi asked worriedly. Gah! The bird screamed, and then shook its body violently to shake off the frost on its body, but even so, the feather crest on its head drooped, and it looked like it had no energy. Didi, it seems that you overslept, Lotto. Su Yi, are you fighting against Dan Emperor, Lotto? The cell phone Lotto flew out of the backpack. Su Yi stared at the field and said, "Yes, Alchemy Emperor is really strong." Although Su Yi had other methods, they were reserved for Dan Emperor's trump card. Facing an experienced champion like Dan Emperor, he cannot expose his trump card too early, because if Dan Emperor is on guard, the success rate of his trump card will plummet. Ice Walking Doll, freeze dry. Seeing that Su Yi did not take back the scratch, Emperor Dan ordered. Ku, the ice-stepping doll waved its ice staff, and howling freezing air blew in. Tickling the bird. Try to avoid it, and then rush in and get closer. Su Yi shouted. Gah! Scratching bird ran hard, the ice-stepping puppet waved its ice staff frequently, and the white and freezing air swept towards scratching bird one by one. Just rush over like this. Su Yi clenched his fists nervously and shouted as he watched the scratching bird gradually approach the ice-walking doll. Alchemy Emperor smiled slightly and said, seize it. Use mental strength. Kulu. The eyes on the belly of the ice-stepping doll burst out with purple light, and its powerful mental power instantly caught the tickling bird that was close at hand. It controlled the tickling bird and continued to impact it with super energy. Tickle the bird. Su Yi was anxious. Gah! The bird screamed in pain under the impact of strong mental thoughts. Tickle the bird. Come on, get rid of it. Su Yi shouted. Gah! 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 The scratching bird neighed loudly, and its body kept struggling under the control of the mind. At the same time, a blue energy wrapped around the scratching bird's body bit by bit. Su Yi was shocked. Did he learn a new move? Oh, Emperor Dan looked at this scene with interest. Didi, Su Yi, that move seems to be the Divine Bird Slam, Luo Tuo. Rotom said excitedly on the mobile phone. Did you learn new moves during the battle? Su Yi murmured. Gah wow. Tickle Bird's expression was firm, and the blue light gradually enveloped the whole body, and then the light became stronger, competing with the purple mental power that controlled it. Ku, the ice-stepping puppet's hands were trembling, and it was obvious that it couldn't control the scratching. Come on, tickle the bird, use the Divine Bird Strike to break through the restraints, and attack bravely. Su Yi clenched his fists and shouted. Feeling Su Yi's momentum and encouragement, the tickling bird chirped loudly. The azure blue divine bird violently broke through the suppression of mental strong thoughts, galloped across the wilderness, and turned into an siege arrow to rush towards the ice-walking doll. Hepu and Xiaoyu clenched their fists. Although they liked Dan Di very much, their blood boiled with excitement because he had temporarily learned the moves to break through the difficult situation. Ice-walking doll, Dan Emperor shouted as a reminder. Ku, the ice-stepping doll had just recovered from the shock of having its mental power forcibly broken through, when it faced the fierce attack of the bird-tickling bird. Bang! The big blue bird quickly slammed into the ice-walking puppet. Its small body was instantly knocked out, and then it drew an arc and fell heavily to the ground. This powerful blow caused a lot of damage. Sonia said. Brother Su Yi and his Pokémon are so strong. The original disadvantage was reversed in an instant. Hepu watched nervously, but he was obsessed with this kind of battle. Is this a Pokémon battle? Xiaoyu's eyes lit up with stars. This kind of battle with constant reversal, mutual attack and defense, and frequent strategies is really intoxicating. Bah! Tickle Bird stopped his moves and came to a sudden stop in the wilderness. End it. Hit hard with a solid rock. Su Yi ordered the pursuit without hesitation. Gah! Tickle Bird picked up the energy rock and rushed over again. Don't underestimate us. Freeze drying. Dan Emperor shouted. The fallen ice-walking doll stood up tremblingly, swung its ice staff, and released a whistling dry freezing air. Throw it over. Gah! Tickle Bird stopped, aimed at the ice-walking puppet not far away, and threw the rock hard. Call. The energy rock broke through the freeze-drying and hit the ice-walking doll hard. Ku, seeing that it was certain that he would be knocked down by a heavy blow from a solid rock, the ice-walking doll exploded with all its strength and released the freeze-drying to its maximum power. Before being knocked down, it released a full-strength freeze-drying blow. When it comes to tickling the birds. Bang! The ice-stepping doll rolled its mosquito-repellent incense eyes, and the scratching bird let out a mournful cry. It was cut by the freeze-drying frost storm as cold as a knife, and lay down on the ground covered with frost and frostbite. Although he was still shouting, his voice was extremely weak. He was probably just one hit away from being on the verge of death, and it was obvious that he would not be able to continue fighting. Before falling down, the ice-walking doll actually completed the ultimate one-for-one exchange. Well done, ice-stepping doll. Dandy took back the Pokémon and comforted him in a low voice. Well done, tickling the birds. Su Yi praised without hesitation. It knocked down the ice-walking doll with 4 times the restraint, and also dealt considerable damage to thousand-faced evasion. As a scratching bird, it has done a good job. Next Pokémon. Dandy threw the Pokémon ball. Su Yi also released the accompanying beast at the same time. Hooray! Click. Oh, the fierce jackal dragon and the thousand-faced refugee. Will the two who fought against each other face each other again? Dan Emperor said with a smile. I thought I could see your other Pokémon. Su Yi smiled and said, didn't you also not send out the third Pokémon? However, I already know all the information about the ferocious jackal dragon. This time, Chinmian Yuyu and I will not be so easily seized by you. In this case, you still send it. Do you have any strategy? What? Emperor Dan asked seemingly casually. Su Yi smiled and said, who knows? Then I'm welcome. Freezing light. Emperor Dan waved his hand. Click. The thousand-faced refugee pointed his hand, and the freezing light shot out. Get away. The big ferocious jackal knew that it would be difficult to escape by crawling at its own speed, so it quickly rolled sideways a few times to avoid the freezing rays. Roar loudly. Su Yi ordered hurriedly. Roar. The big ferocious jackal roared ferociously, and directly used its loud roar to stop Chinmian Yuyu's next actions. Dash forward. Don't let it succeed. Emperor Dan was deeply impressed by the fierce jackal dragon's big mouth move. Click. Chinmian Yuyang ran flexibly with his hands and feet, and the ferocious jackal dragon bit tightly behind him. One more roar. The running big ferocious jackal roared ferociously again, and the evil shock wave swept towards Chinmian Yuan. Scatter them with sniper fire. Click. Chinmian Yuyang turned around gracefully, then used his hands to shoot 2 sniper shots. Bang. The energy impact exploded, causing smoke and dust to rise in the wilderness. The next moment, the ferocious jackal dragon rushed out of the smoke and opened its mouth to bite fiercely. Get away. Thousand Faces Avoidance retracted his hands and turned sideways to avoid the bite. Dragon Tail. Su Yi clenched his fists. The plan was about to succeed. Emperor Dan was stunned. What surprised Emperor Dan was that he thought Su Yi was going to have a fierce and passionate second showdown with the fierce jackal and Thousand Faces Avoider, but in the end, he used Dragon Tail to forcefully replace Pokémon. It's a bit of a waste of his feelings. The ferocious jackal took one bite of the air and then quickly turned around and flicked its tail. It struck quickly and continuously, leaving Chinmian Yuyang, who had just dodged the attack, unable to react in time. The slender dragon tail wrapped in bright green scales whipped it, turning it into a beam of light and pulling it back into the ball, and then forcibly replaced Dandy's next Pokémon. At the same time, Su Yi used the fastest hand speed to retrieve the ferocious jackal dragon, and then took out a capture ball. It's big brother's ace Charizard. Heppu shouted excitedly when he saw the Pokémon that Dandy was forcibly replaced. Trump card. What I'm waiting for is the ace. Ouch. Although the fire-breathing dragon was a little confused, its excellent combat qualities allowed it to immediately spread its wings and take off vigilantly, overlooking the battlefield for alert. At the same time, Su Yi grinned and said, the plan is clear. Come on, Zyba. Wow. As soon as the dizzy bird came out, it just screamed in a very salty way, showing no energy at all. Su Yi. It seems that being single again has a big impact on it, and without training and cooperation, its compatibility with Su Yi is not good. But it doesn't matter, as long as it can use those 2 or 3 moves. It's a new Pokémon. Sonia subconsciously took out the illustrated book and scanned it. As she expected, there were Pokémon that were not recorded on the record. Plus the ones she had seen last time, a total of 6 unrecorded Pokémon appeared in Su Yi's team. If there are 1 or 2 that are not recorded, it is okay to say that it is luck. But this time, a group of unrecorded Pokémon appeared. Combined with the egg of unrecorded Pokémon that Su Yi gave to Hup before, she could guess that those Pokémon actually had groups and habitats. Ground. According to what Su Yi said before, this time he conquered a new partner, the new Pokémon in front of him. If Su Yi did not lie, it means that Su Yi conquered a new Pokémon in just 2 or 3 days. Unrecorded Pokémon. This shows that this Pokémon's habitat should not be far from Galar. This aroused Sonia's curiosity even more. Which unexplored secret realm contains so many unknown Pokémon? Oh, is this your new partner? He doesn't seem to have any fighting spirit. Dan Emperor smiled, but he was wary. Each of Su Yi's Pokémon can bring him big or small surprises, but when he sees his ace Charizard on the stage, he immediately replaces it. There must be some reason for it. Hey, since you feel depressed, let's vent it. Dodge him. Su Yi pointed at the fire-breathing dragon in the air. Can fly. I'll dodge it for you. Whoa. Ba reluctantly came back to her senses and looked at the target in the sky. As if the DNA was moving, the luminous film above her head immediately unfolded. What kind of attack is this? Emperor Dan immediately became alert. The suddenly unfolded membrane suddenly emitted a bright flash of light. Emperor Dan was startled and thought to himself, is it some kind of light attack? Or is it an attack that requires charging like a solar beam? However, when the flash flashed for the second time to warm up, he suddenly realized, could it be, little? Before he could say the word, be careful, he raised his head and pointed the luminous film at the fire-breathing dragon in the sky. The dazzling white light flashed instantly, extremely dazzling in the wilderness at dusk. Ouch! The dazzling flash of light stung the fire-breathing dragon's eyes. This stimulation immediately made its mind dizzy for a short time, and it fell from the air without the ability to resist. Charizard. Dan Emperor, who covered his eyes in time, looked immediately and shouted nervously. Hey, turn back quickly. Su Yi ordered decisively. Wow, the bird that had just dodged a shot suddenly felt refreshed, and the whole bird had some vitality. Relying on the characteristics of the platform walker, its speed doubled from the original speed suddenly burst out. Like an arrow from the string, it rushed towards the fire-breathing dragon falling from the sky. Ding! The rapid return hit, the dizzy bird turned into light and quickly returned to the ball, and the Charizard fell to the ground after being hit. Fortunately, it resisted the insect system 4 times and was not seriously injured. However, coupled with the impact of the fall, he is still in a dizzy state and has not yet recovered. And Su Yi's trump card is now officially on display. Ouch! The terrifying red beast flew out, and before everyone could express their horror at its appearance, it rushed straight towards the unresisting Charizard. Broken Claw. Su Yi grasped the claw fiercely. Howling, the brutal claw dragon opened its 10 sharp claws and swung out, and the pale light streaked across the tragic arc. Ba la la. A series of hideous scars appeared on Charizard's body, and exploded with a loud bang. His physical strength turned into light spots and quickly flew away. Charizard was knocked away by this heavy blow and fell to the ground. What kind of Pokémon is this? Dan Emperor looked shocked. With the same expression as him, there were Hepu and Xiaoyu who had never seen the Misty Claw. They originally thought that the Great Dire Jackal was already a very ferocious Pokémon, but the appearance of the Dire Claw once again refreshed their understanding of ferocity and cruelty. The scarlet scales and fibrous muscles all over the body looked like their fur had been stripped off to reveal bloody flesh and blood. The protruding sharp teeth in their mouths could only be regarded as terrifying, and the 10-edged claws made them merely when you see it, you can think of the cruel scene of flesh being torn apart. What kind of terrifying Pokémon is this? Hep murmured in disbelief. It was difficult for him to compare the current command of the Misty Claw with the cute Pokémon he introduced to Su Yi just now. Dreams are connected. Wounded Claw. Su Yi shouted again. Call. The Charizard dragon exhaled a white breath and flew towards the Charizard with a vigorous body. Charizard. Fly. Emperor Dan frowned and shouted. Ouch. Charizard gritted his teeth. Although his eyes could not see clearly, he immediately obeyed the command and flapped his wings to climb upwards. In the process, lacerations on his body were induced. Although the damage at one time was not high, due to the continuous waving of wings, the laceration caused waves of pain to plague Charizard, making its face appear painful. Are you blind? You are also suffering from an abnormal state of injury. Emperor Dan quickly realized the situation of the fire-breathing dragon at this moment. Turn violently, then catch it. Su Yi clenched his fist nervously. If the fire-breathing dragon completely flew into the sky, the miserable claw dragon would face a terrible baptism of fire, and it must be fought quickly. The running Miss Claw dragon roared, white steam erupted from its mouth, and red light shone through the gaps between the scales and muscles on its neck. At this time, its physical attack and speed directly increased by 2 levels, and it suddenly accelerated miserably. The clawed dragon suddenly pounced on the Charizard in the air, and its strong muscles suddenly burst out with powerful force, allowing it to catch up with the Charizard who was trying to soar in one leap. Such terrifying power and speed. Dan Emperor was extremely shocked. Such a ferocious Pokémon could actually burst out with such speed and power in an instant. It's really incredible. Fire-breathing dragon. Diagonally below the front, big characters burst. Emperor Dan shouted urgently. Roar. The fire-breathing dragon roared angrily, and the overwhelming flames reflected the red sunset sky. The overwhelming flames instantly engulfed the misty claw dragon, and the surging flames set off a heat wave that swept across all directions. Even Su Yi in the distance could feel the blazing heat. Misery clawed dragon. Su Yi shouted, howling. The crimson figure tore through the flames and rushed out violently. Although its body was covered with black marks of burns, the misty claw waved its ferocious claws without flinching. Stab. The ferocious claws tore into the body of the fire-breathing dragon again, and at the same time, the laceration state triggered 10 full laceration damage. Whew! The fire-breathing dragon screamed in pain, and its body slowly fell from the air. Even though the flying type is resistant to fighting type moves Mutilation Claw and the burn status have the damage of the physical moves of the Claw, that claw still caused horrific damage. Charizard, cheer up, fight back, air slash, Dan Emperor said calmly. Oh, Charizard cheered up and tried to flap its wings, enduring the lacerations to stabilize its falling figure. At the same time, it swung several sharp blades at the Charizard, which was unable to use its strength in the air. CCC. A series of attacks cut into the body of the Misty Claw Dragon, and the effective attacks caused considerable damage. Bang! The scarred Mist Claw Dragon landed on the ground, and a burst of flames suddenly ignited on its body, causing it to roar in pain. Sure enough, the tactics are good, but various factors in the battle will also lead to different results. Although the fire-breathing dragon was seriously injured, Dan Emperor's sharp counterattack brought the situation back. Su Yi's palms were sweating. At the same time, the spirit was also very high. Now, although Charizard was hit head-on by Su Yi's combination of control and burst, Charizard counterattacked in time and caused considerable damage and burns to the Charizard, so much so that the Charizard's non-fixed damage the damage of physical-like moves is halved. Fight quickly, otherwise, the violent side effects will push the situation to an irreversible situation. Su Yi secretly thought. As a side effect of becoming violent, the defense can be lowered by 2 levels and the ball can be recovered to recover, but fatigue requires solid rest and food to recover. Continue the laceration claw. Continue the tearing to the end. Although resisted, the laceration claw can aggravate Charizard's laceration damage, and the damage caused is still considerable. Charizard, hold still, Emperor Dan shouted. Charizard spread out its stance, waiting for instructions. Howl. The Misty Claw Dragon swooped in, its claws glowing pale white and tearing at it. Get away. As soon as Dan Emperor started speaking, the fire-breathing dragon had already flapped its wings and took off with tacit understanding. The Misty Claw missed the attack and did not stop. Instead, it jumped up from the ground and pounced on the Charizard above. It's rude to come and not return. Dragon tail. Emperor Dan laughed. Su Yi. Charizard swung its scale-wrapped tail towards the claws of the Dragon Claw, and while blocking the move, it forced the Dragon Claw back into the ball. Bang! The big ferocious jackal dragon appeared on the field, roared, and looked around in surprise. Big characters explode. The fierce jackal dragon. Pay attention above. Su Yi quickly reminded. Quote? The ferocious jackal dragon looked up and saw overwhelming flames. Get out there and use loud roar. The big ferocious jackal dragon relied on the resistance of the dragon element to the fire element and rushed out of the sea of fire, but it was also burned black by the flames. It raised its head and roared in anger, and the black evil energy impacted the fire-breathing dragon. Get away. Dragon wave. Ouch. The fire-breathing dragon nimbly avoided the loud roar, and at the same time, the dragon energy brewing in its mouth spurted out. The dazzling purple energy dragon roared and rushed towards the big ferocious jackal dragon. The big ferocious jackal dragon couldn't dodge and was all hit by the dragon wave. Boom! The energy explosion whipped up strong winds, and the ferocious jackal dragon retreated with a bang, panting violently, and its body was covered with large and small scars. It's not good. The ferocious jackal dragon's anti-air capabilities are poor, and it roared loudly but was flexibly dodged. And Dazzling Bird's ability has been exposed, so the flash tactic cannot easily work. Big ferocious jackal dragon, come back. Su Yi had no choice but to replace the Dragon Claw Dragon. Although the Dragon Claw Dragon had no anti-air capabilities, it was fast and could dodge, so he could only use this to find opportunities. Charizard, come back. Emperor Dan immediately followed suit and took back the fire-breathing dragon. Su Yi was surprised. When the basic abilities of all his accompanying beasts were exposed, the Alchemy Emperor didn't use the fire-breathing dragon to maintain suppression. The Pokémon just now called Charizard was really incredible. It inflicted so much damage to Charizard in an instant, and it also gave it the ability to be injured by strenuous exercise. Dandy took out the Pokémon. The ball was thrown at the same time as Su Yi. Beep! A Pokémon floating in the air with a head like a fighter jet and a virtual tail at the end appeared on the field. Quasi-God Dragon Baruto. It's broken. Su Yi secretly shouted that it was bad. The dragon and ghost-type dragon Baluto is immune to fighting-type moves. Dragon Arrow. Beep. Doran Baruto launched the two Doran meshes from the launch chamber on his head. The initial forms of the two Doran Baruto turned into two small missiles and fired rapidly. You are 3 against 1. Unfair. Su Yi shouted. Use Dragon Claws to intercept them. The Misty Claw sniffed the scent and tried to catch the rapidly shooting Doran Messia. The sharp claws in its hands lit up with a bright green light, and it was ready to go. Dragon Wave. Unexpectedly, the Alchemy Emperor immediately shouted. 2. Doran Baruto opened his mouth, and the Energy Dragon roared again. This time, the miserable Claw Dragon had to face 3 attacks at once. Tear them all into pieces. Su Yi shouted. Ouch! The Misty Claw Dragon roared angrily, and the dragon's claws tore rapidly and fiercely. However, after blocking 2 attacks from the dragon's arrow, it could only barely stand in front of it to resist the dragon's wave. Boom! Bang! The Misty Claw flew out upside down, then reacted immediately, latched onto the ground with its sharp claws, tore long traces on the ground, and then stopped. You didn't use that laceration claw move again. Could it be that it's a fighting type? Dan Emperor guessed some of the attributes again. And it looks like your team has a lot of dragon Pokémon, a bit like a friend of mine, Kibana. Dandy smiled. Su Yi guessed. Do you want to give you a reward? Next, subtle surprise attack. Doran Baruto's figure escaped into the darkness. Ouch! The Misty Claw was surprised by the enemy's sudden disappearance. Cruel Claw Dragon, calm down. The opponent will launch an attack from anywhere next, and they are always ready to attack. At the same time, Su Yi was also quickly scanning the surroundings to prevent Doran Baruto's sudden appearance. Out! The figure of Doran Baruto suddenly appeared, directly behind the Misty Claw. Jump back and bite. Catch it! Su Yi shouted. The tense Claw Dragon's tense body suddenly moved, like a fully drawn bow being released suddenly. Its body quickly twisted and bit back. The sharp teeth in its mouth were filled with evil energy. The evil element restrained the ghost element. Dragon Arrow. Emperor Dan also reacted quickly and ordered immediately. Doran Baruto almost shot 2 dragon arrows right at the face of the Misty Claw. Throw the dragon arrow back. Su Yi had an idea. Click. The Misty Claw Dragon bites quickly, bites the incoming dragon arrow accurately, and then throws it hard at Dalong Baruto. 2. Doran Baruto, who was caught off guard, was thrown away. The 2 Doran Messiahs, who were dragon arrows, were scarred and weak. It was obviously difficult to launch them as dragon arrows. Pounce. Dragon Claw. Baluto, the dragon who was still in a state of restraint, was instantly knocked down by the swooping dragon. At the same time, the dragon's claws grabbed fiercely. Dragon Tail. Emperor Dan shouted hurriedly. A move will not work on me twice. Vent your primitive rage. Use your bite to tear it apart. Su Yi roared loudly. Hoo, woo-hoo. The Misty Claw bit Doran Baruto with all his strength. In its mouth, the white vapor produced by the violent movement of its body blew in front of Doran Baruto. The ferocious face in the vapor made it awesome. Before being hit by the dragon's tail, the Misty Claw twisted its body, tearing and throwing Doran Baruto violently like a rag bag, and the dragon's tail was forcibly broken. What a brutal and ruthless attack. Emperor Dan clenched his fists and shouted, use the dragon wave to break free. Beep. La. Doran Baruto tried his best to pour the dragon wave into his face. Boom. The dazzling purple energy explodes. The misty claw was blown several times and rushed out of the smoke, then quickly stood up. Just as the time for becoming violent ended, the red lines on its neck darkened. It panted violently, saliva flowed from its mouth, looking tired and tired. It looked hungry, and the burning flames flashed past, causing it to roar, but its eyes became more ferocious. And Doran Baruto fell to the ground, losing his fighting ability. What a scary Pokémon. Looking at the scarred but still fierce Clawsaurus, Alchemy couldn't help but be in awe of this Pokémon's ferocious and violent fighting style. Brother, 2 Pokémon have already fallen. Hup said in disbelief, and the ace Charizard was still seriously injured in the claws of that terrifying Pokémon. Sonia shook her head and said, "You can't look at it that way. Although there are only 2 Pokémon left in Dan Emperor, the ace Charizard still has strong combat power, and Thousand Faces evasion only suffered 1 outstanding damage. That's all. The situation on Su Yi's side is that the Pokémon called Tickler has no fighting power, the great ferocious Jackal is seriously injured, and the ace of the Ace Dragon is not only seriously injured but also in a burnt state. He is also in a state of exhaustion." Quote. The blue-purple Pokémon named Zyba looks like it has just been conquered. Although it has not consumed much physical strength, its overall combat power should be completely inferior to the other 3. Sonia analyzed the situation carefully. Heppu suddenly understood and said, "In other words, Brother Dandy and Brother Su Yi are barely evenly matched now." Sonia nodded. Although it's evenly matched, it's still amazing to be able to subdue and command such a Pokémon, and to fight to such an intense level with the champion Dandy, Xiaoyu exclaimed. Heppu nodded. The fierce fighting style of the ferocious Claw Dragon, under Su Yi's command, was really impressive. I haven't been so nervous for a long time, and I haven't had this kind of passionate feeling for a long time. Dandy took back Doran Baruto and raised a smile full of fighting spirit at the corner of his mouth. Me too. Su Yi took back the Misty Claw Dragon and let it rest for a while. Dan Emperor and Su Yi released the next companion together. Come on. Thousand Faces escape. Siba, please. Dazzling Bird looked at the enemy in front of him curiously, without feeling any nervousness about fighting. Shaw, this is my first battle with you, please, fight as much as possible. Su Yi said. Wow, Shaba nodded, getting into a posture and getting ready to fight. Okay, Su Yi took a deep breath and shouted, Dazzling Flash. Bah, the Dazzling Bird opens the luminous film and quickly flashes to warm up. Don't look at that flash of light. Dan Emperor shouted immediately. Taha, although Chinmi and Yiyang didn't understand why Dan Emperor was suddenly nervous, he quickly turned his head and covered his eyes with his arms. Acrobatics. Shaw immediately stopped flashing, and under the characteristics of the platform walker, it increased the speed burst by 2 levels. It quickly took a run and then jumped high, using its sharp claws like knives under its feet to grab Chinmian to evade. So fast. Dan Emperor said in surprise, that speed was like a blue-purple phantom. Stand in. Then snipe. Bang. Thousand-faced evader disappeared in the smoke, and a stand-in doll appeared on the spot. When it reappeared, it was right next to Zyba, who was rushing towards the stand-in. Thousand-faced evader used his hands to shoot guns, and a strong stream of water shot out. Careful. No matter how fast he was, there would be a pause at the moment after the attack. Chinmian dodged perfectly, controlled the timing and hit the target accurately with 2 sniper shots. Wow, Bia was instantly knocked down by the strong current, but it got up immediately, and its body didn't seem to be seriously injured. Dragon type again. Emperor Dan raised his eyebrows. Bluff. Whoa, whoa. Biba made a harsh and noisy cry, and an angry feeling flooded into his mind. Thousand-faced avoider roared forgetfully. His physical attack increased by 2 levels, and he fell into a state of chaos, and it was obvious that, as a special attacker, it actually has no benefits. Are there any interference moves? Emperor Dan couldn't help but feel a little headache. Thousand Faces evasion. Calm down and use rapid retracement. Don't let it succeed. Run and use acrobatics. The Chinmian evader shook his head and made no move, but Kiaba took this opportunity to jump and attack again. Thousand-faced escape. Freezing light. Emperor Dan also roared loudly. Thousand Faces escaper hammered his head to clear up the confusion, and then fired a gun with one hand, shooting the cold beam at Shishi, who had nowhere to hide in the air. Depend on. Does this clear up the confusion? Let's start playing with bonds. Su Yi felt a toothache. Shaw was completely hit by the freezing rays, and then turned into an ice sculpture and crashed to the ground. Su Yi, does this trigger freezing? Freeze it completely. Looking at the ice sculpture that kept breaking, Emperor Dan ordered decisively. Click. Chinmian evade increased his intensity, and the freezing rays continued to shoot out. In the end, Shaw was frozen in the ice and lost his ability to fight. Yeah, Brother Dandy has won back the victory, Hepu said with a fist. Lu Kao waved and shouted, Su Yi, come on, meow. You've done a great job, please give me some advice in the future. Su Yi took back her words and comforted her with a smile. If she is willing to listen to his command, it's a good start. This is the real second showdown, come on. The fierce jackal dragon. Roar. The big ferocious jackal dragon looked at Chinmian Yiyu. At this moment, both sides were in bad shape. Chinmian Yiyu had been hit hard by a grass-type solid rock before, and he had lost a certain amount of physical strength due to the use of the avatar. In terms of physical strength, it is not outstanding, but it is also on the edge of danger at this moment. Not to mention the ferocious jackal dragon, which suffered a lot of scars from the fire-breathing dragon's dragon wave and big character explosion. Freezing light. Gobble it up. Knowing that there was no way to dodge Chinmian Dodge's precise and fast shooting, the ferocious jackal charged forward with all its might. The freezing light froze pieces of ice on the body of the great fierce jackal dragon, and the great fierce jackal dragon approached Chinmian Refuge with red eyes and opened its bloody mouth. Substitute. Just as he was swallowing it in his huge mouth, Chinmian Yuyu turned into a substitute and avoided being swallowed for a certain distance. Unexpectedly, Su Yi immediately ordered, spit it back. Before the stand-in doll fully entered the stomach, it was spat out by the ferocious jackal dragon and hit Chinmian Yuyong's body. At the same time, the ferocious jackal dragon rushed up to bite him again. Cock, click, the sharp teeth bit, Chinmian Yuyong screamed in pain. Use the freezing light to completely defeat it. Emperor Dan waved his hand. Thousand Faces Refuge resolutely raised his index finger in pain, and the freezing light shone again. The ferocious jackal dragon. Avenge the shame. Bite it with all your strength. Su Yi shouted sharply. Click. The ferocious jackal dragon's eyes were determined, and it bit hard with its huge mouth. The light of the moves emitted by the sharp teeth in its mouth became larger and sharper. The sharp teeth were deeply embedded in the body of Chinmian Yiyu. Thousand Faces Avoidance's freezing rays attacked the great ferocious jackal dragon, and then stopped abruptly. The great ferocious jackal dragon was also covered in frost, maintaining a tight biting posture and losing its ability to fight. This is your fighting style, fierce, wild, and violent. It's hard to imagine that you are a newcomer who has only been exposed to Pokémon battles for more than a month, and you are already able to control these violent Pokémon and compete with others. Compared to a traditional trainer, you can better utilize the physical advantages of Pokémon. Dandy retracted Thousand Faces Avoidance and praised. Now, it's 1v1, Emperor Dan. Ace versus Ace. Su Yi took back the ferocious jackal dragon with a serious look on his face. Yes. Dandy held up his hat and threw the elf ball. Ouch. The fire-breathing dragon roared menacingly. Roar. The misty claw looked fiercely, and hunger made it even more manic. Your fighting will is very tenacious. I can see it from the eyes of your partners who are trying their best for you. Dan Emperor said. Su Yi smiled and said, because there are countless strange peaks and dangerous scenery ahead of us, what we have to do is to climb the peak bravely. Before that, we will not stop. In the sky under the setting sun, a purple-red meteor dragged a long trail and roared down. Meow, Lu Kao exclaimed. What is that? Hepu and Xiaoyu looked up in surprise. That's the wishing star. Sonia and Su Yi shouted at the same time. Sonia recognized it because her grandmother was a doctor who studied it, while Su Yi recognized this giant wristband. Basic materials. Boom. The meteor fell in front of Su Yi and made a pit on the ground. In the pit, a strange-shaped stone glowed with pink lines. According to legend, the wishing star will land next to those who truly have dreams. Sonia confirmed again. Buzz. Suddenly, in the hole where the wishing star hit, purple-red light emitted from the cracked ground. Then, cracks opened in the ground, and Gigantamax energy spurted out. Is this an energy point? Sonia asked in surprise. Roaring, the miserable claw dragon looked at the light in the cracks around him, feeling a little at a loss. Click. Be careful, Su Yi shouted. Under the feet of the misty claw dragon, the ground cracked open, and huge energy spurted out, covering the misty claw dragon. This is what you want. Emperor Dan looked at the misty claw dragon shrouded in light and whispered. The sky began to grow dark and heavy. Su Yi grinned and said, Gigantamax. Boom, boom, boom. Like the sound of a beating heart, the body of the misty claw dragon continued to grow in size due to the tremendous energy, and was shrouded in red-purple light, with red clouds surrounding its head and claws. It's Gigantamax. Heppu raised his head and said in surprise. What a twist. Dandy smiled, looked at Charizard, nodded, and put it back into the ball. Then, Dandy held the elf ball, and the giant wristband on his wrist emitted light, which then merged into the elf ball. The elf ball glowed, grew larger, and was finally thrown. Bang! Roar! The Gigantamax Charizard roared up to the sky, the flames on both sides of its mouth burned blazingly, and the wings on its back turned into red flame wings, lighting up the night sky. Charizard! Emperor Dan waved his hand. Cruel Claw Dragon! Su Yi clenched his fist. The giant hell destroys the flames. Gigantic Dragon Rider! Roar! The super giant fire-breathing dragon roared and lowered its head, and the wings of flames behind it exploded, condensing into a flaming phoenix with gorgeous flames and spreading out its wings. Howl! The misty claw dragon clasped the ground with its sharp claws and roared to the sky. Its red dragon wings spread out on the ground and rotated rapidly, bringing up a black and purple tornado of dragon energy. Boom! The extremely giant dragon rider collided violently with the extremely giant hell flame extinguisher. The scorching red flames and the thick and powerful dragon energy were constantly intertwined, twisted, and erupted. The shock wave carried a rolling heat wave and swept in all directions. Meow! Lu Kao gripped the bone dagger and stuck it on the ground to stabilize her body, preventing herself from being blown away. Sonia stood in front of Heppu and Xiaoyu, struggling to resist the strong wind. Lucky! A lucky egg ran over and held up a wall of light in front of everyone, blocking them from the impact of the strong wind and heat wave. Thank you, Gili Egg. Hep thanked. Sonia turned around to see Su Yi facing the storm without fear, staring closely at the changes in the battlefield, and put the auspicious egg's elf ball back into his pocket with one hand. Emperor Dan held his hat and looked directly at the center of the energy vortex with resolute eyes. Xiaoyu's eyes lit up and he said in amazement, both are powerful and handsome. Boom! Bang! Finally, the two energies completely collapsed and exploded. The aftermath of the explosion affected the Gigantamax Charizard and the Gigantamax Charizard. The two protected themselves in front of them, and were knocked back a few steps by the aftermath. They knocked on the ground with a thud. A heavy drum beat. The Charizard's body lit up with a decaying deep blue light, its attack power was reduced, and flames ignited under the feet of the Charizard, burning it. Do it again! Emperor Dan shouted. Ouch! The Gigantamax Charizard roared in response, the flame wings behind it blazing with fierce fighting spirit. Cruel Claw Dragon! Extremely giant fist fight! Su Yi shouted. Howl! The claw dragon roared, opened its claws, and the next moment, orange light enveloped the claws, forming a huge claw of light. Although it is called a giant fist fight, it is actually a giant claw. Call! The giant hell extinguishing fire phoenix spread its wings and flew towards it. The misty claw roared and waved out its huge claws, the light of its claws tracing an elegant and deadly arc. Bang! The flames exploded, and the misty claw dragon was affected by the explosion. It took 2 steps back, and its body lit up with a yellow light that increased its attack. It's now. Extremely giant flying attack. Dan Emperor clenched his fist and shouted urgently. The super giant fire-breathing dragon instantly unfolded its wings of flame and flapped vigorously, and the strong wind formed a tornado that swept through and strangled it like a drill. The giant dragon rider! Su Yi shouted, but it was still a step too slow, and the giant flew towards the misty claw dragon. The violent storm pushed it back bit by bit, and continued to cut and twist the body of the misty claw dragon. The miserable claw dragon's consciousness was a little confused. After a long and fierce battle, the exhaustion and hunger after the ferocious battle, coupled with the injuries of the two generals Lian Zan and Dan Emperor, it had reached its limit. Cruel Claw Dragon! Su Yi's shout reached his ears from vague to clear. Hooray! The Misty Claw Dragon clings to the ground with great flying momentum, the red dragon wings reappear, and the violent dragon's storm sweeps across again, destroying everything around it indiscriminately. Boom, boom. The rioting energy stirred up strong winds and smoke, and the Misty Claw burst out of the smoke, waving its sharp claws and biting with its huge mouth. Who said you have to use the max move in a max battle? The Misty Claw. Bite it. The Charizard jumped in front of the Charizard and used its claws and teeth to perform a primitive bite. Charizard roared in pain. Charizard, the final giant hell-extinguishing flame. Boom. The fire-breathing dragon roared angrily and hugged the miserable clawed dragon with its backhand. The flames around its body condensed and compressed. A huge flaming phoenix waved its wings and blasted at the nearby miserable clawed dragon. Bloody clawed dragon. Just use the giant fist to attack to the end. Boom. Fiery and violent flames enveloped the Misty Claw. Boom. The flame blooms like a red lotus. The red-purple energy dissipated and turned into particles. The Charizard dragon shrank in the light and fell to the ground. The Charizard dragon also changed back to its original shape. It was half kneeling on the ground, looking tired and painful, and its body was covered with bites and cuts. Trace. The darkness in the sky recedes, revealing the original darkness and tranquility of the night. It's over, Sonia muttered. Ahem. The winner has been decided. In the 4v4 duel between Dan Emperor and Su Yi, Dan Emperor wins. Sonia announced loudly. Hup did not celebrate loudly, but stared blankly at the land destroyed by the violent battle, marveling at the huge destructive power of the giant battle. Ouch! Charizard cried out in pain, the lacerations that had just appeared on its body eating away at its physical strength. Emperor Dan, don't let the fire-breathing dragon move. Wait for 8 seconds and it will recover from the laceration. Su Yi said. Emperor Dan nodded and said, is it a laceration state? An abnormal state that I have never heard of. After Su Yi fed it with vitality fragments, the Misty Claw Dragon woke up leisurely. Ouch! The miserable Claw Dragon looked at Su Yi, seemingly unwilling and a little guilty. Su Yi shook his head and said, this is not your problem, but our problem. Su Yi released all the accompanying animals and then performed basic medical treatment on them. Everyone, thank you for your efforts. Su Yi comforted everyone. He touched the big, drooped head of the big ferocious jackal dragon and said, you have fought very hard and performed well. You have the aura of a dark green predator. The big ferocious jackal roared and raised its head, rubbing Su Yi's forehead. Then, he straightened the bird's crest and said, the performance was good, especially the divine bird punch, it was so cool. Gah! The bird jumped happily. It seemed that he would not be affected by the result of the battle, but cared more about Su Yi's opinion. Hey, please use your talents more in the future. Su Yi grinned. Sha nodded, but her mood was surprisingly calm. Misery Claw Dragon, are you feeling better? Su Yi turned around and asked with concern. The Misty Claw sneezed, and red-purple particles floated out. It shook its body, and then nodded to indicate that it was nothing serious. What a vicious battle, Dan Emperor said as he fanned himself. Yes, Sonia sighed. She could see that, after all, in the past, alchemy emperors used strength and skills to fight head-on, and could win even if their attributes were unfavorable. Facing Su Yi's Pokémon, he rarely switched Pokémon many times, or forcibly swapped out Su Yi's Pokémon for targeted attacks. This allowed him to treat him so cautiously, which showed that Su Yi had given him enough pressure. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.